clever pun. The conversation.
Hello and welcome to the Kongversation. We're back. It's time for the Kongversation's lucky number, season 13. I'm Hyle Russell.
And I am Matt Cornah. Hooray!
Hooray! Hooray! Yeah! You know, Matt, first of all,
Hello,
it's so
yes.
nice to have you back in the co-host chair.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks for letting me sit in it. It's a nice chair.
I'm sorry it's now molded in the shape of Dustin Jackson's buttocks, but it should still be plenty comfortable for you.
He has an ergonomic buttocks.
Yeah, it's beneficial for everyone.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's why I have him on so much. No, at the end of the Kongversation season 12, the end of last year, I said to our loyal audience that I did not want to take as much time off between seasons as I did between season 11 and season 12. And I kept that promise. We took a few days longer off this time. That's right. Woo!
Hooray! Again! Hooray! I'm just trying to join in.
Yeah, no, I appreciate the enthusiasm. We weren't just dawdling, though, in our downtime. I mean, I probably was, honestly. I was scratching my less than ergonomic ass. I was watching my hair grow. I need a haircut, Matt. I have not gotten a haircut in a while. I've become this reclusive shut-in, just editing videos about the DKU like some just mad person. And, you know, I've been pondering the complete collapse of the social safety net, among other things. But while I was doing that, others were busy working on the Kongversation in the downtime. The aforementioned Dustin, for instance, he has illustrated a terrific new season artwork, quite apropos for the times we find ourselves in. And those times that we find ourselves in, it turns out, are times where there's lots of Donkey Kong news to discuss, Matt.
There sure is.
Sure is.
Are we going to plug the t-shirt?
We're going to plug the t-shirt right now because what I did is...
plug the t-shirt.
This is the album artwork for the Kongversation's 13th season. You know, what you'll see if you listen to the show on Spotify or Apple Podcast, or even go to the SoundCloud and click the playlist there. But we like to put these album artworks on t-shirts as well. And this is such a striking image that I thought just this once I can upload it with and without the Kongversation logo on it, because it kind of works by itself, and you might not want to have a big, ugly The Kongversation across the top of it. This lovely...
Well, hang on a minute. If you don't want that, if you don't want to be adorned with the words conversation on any part of your body, then you shouldn't be listening to this.
Yeah, I don't know who these people are. These are hypothetical people in my mind. But yeah, it's a lovely protest image of a gorilla raising their fist, holding a banana. You can get it with the Kongversation logo or without it on a t-shirt on either black or white at dkvine.com/merchandise. That's right. And Matt, regular listeners of the Kongversation, as they began this episode, might have had their ears perk up when they heard the theme song. They might have been saying to themselves, well, hold on. Did they change the Kongversation theme on me? It's been so many years since they altered the Kongversation theme. Surely they didn't change the Kongversation theme.
Well, regular listeners to the Kongversation's ears are not lying to them. Yes, do you know what? I did change the Kongversation theme. It is... Well, are people interested in this? It's something I felt kind of guilty about for a while because I feel like I've neglected it.
Why did you feel guilty about it?
Because I hate myself.
Oh no, you're lovely.
I've changed it around from season to season, but it hasn't changed significantly since season 3, maybe, right?
It's been a while since we changed it. I don't know precisely when it's been, but we've had the conversation theme pretty standardized for quite a few years now. So when you came to me and you said, I have some ideas on how to update the theme, I was like, Matt, don't worry yourself about it. That sounds like a lot of work. And you said, well, I'm not just going to change the theme. I'm going to compose upwards of 15 to 20 new themes for the conversation. I'm like, hold up, Matt, hold up. That sounds like even more work than just doing one.
It was an idea I've had kicking around in my brainium for quite a long time, but hitherto hadn't attempted, owing to how daunting it sounded like it would be. But actually, when I ended up doing it, it became a kind of addiction. I couldn't stop making them. It's like eating crisps.
You really couldn't, because this is what my life was like for the past few weeks. I would wake up in the morning, I would get a shower, maybe shave. I don't shave every day.
So you are still washing. That's nice to hear.
I am still washing.
You painted at the beginning of the episode of a kind of goblin-like sort of ogre. A goblin-like ogre, that's a thing, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. But I am very hygienic all the same. I can neglect myself in many ways. I don't like eating, for one, but I do like to keep clean. And 'cause I really just hate the human body, and I really just want to ascend into pure spiritual energy so I can always be clean and I never have to eat. And I, as a spirit, can then just do Donkey Kong universe content 24/7.
I think I'd like you more if you were just a disembodied voice.
The thing is, right, I would have my very minimal breakfast, which is usually just a vegan protein bar, maybe a banana if I'm feeling extraordinarily hungry. I get
very on brand.
I get my carbonated water and caffeine pill, or sometimes when I'm feeling fancy, I have a cappuccino. But I then sit down at my computer and I'm like, how am I going to begin my day for DK Vine? And the first thing I do usually is I pull up Discord and, hop into the inner circle and see what the staff is saying. And you send me messages, Matt, and you're like, I've composed 3 new themes while you were sleeping. And every single time I'm like, these are terrific. And for those who don't know, and maybe I shouldn't be the one to explain it because I don't know musical theory. I just know I like good sounds. They sound good. Clap, clap. But what you proposed to me, which is why I thought you were just off your rocker and I didn't think it was feasible and I didn't want to put it upon you. I never told Nat to do this, is that you wanted a different theme for any potential topic on the conversation that we could then rotate in and out depending on what the episode is about.
Yeah, exactly. And I sort of decided to rebuild the theme from the ground up. I did that on the quiet and you didn't know about that. And then once I'd done that, I came to you and said about my idea. So, even though it sounds quite similar, I assure you I started the whole thing from scratch. And in the process of doing that, I engineered a way to make it easier to stick, I think it's 6 bars of anything I like before the sung show title kicks in for the end of it. I've probably made it sound more complicated and more boring than it is. But that was my idea, and that's what we've gone with. My first 2 experiments were with the Banjo-Kazooie theme and the one you just heard, the Tiki Tak Tribe theme, which I thought would be a good starting point. We'll always have Banjo to talk about, and I was aware Returns HD was on the horizon, though I have to say at that point I wasn't aware I'd be on the episode. Banging on about the theme tune. Is this a good way to start the new season of The Conversation, by the way? Just talking about the theme music?
Probably not.
This is like,
honestly, yeah.
This is like classic albums.
This is probably where we lose all of the audience we've steadily built over the last 12 years. No, I just wanted to give you your due because this is a unique opportunity. This is a unique opportunity because I don't want to spoil for everyone. And I've shared this with our inner circlers, our top tier, high paying patrons. I've shared a few with just all of our members on Patreon, but I don't want to give away the complete library, the discography of conversation themes we have. But yes, there is a conversation theme for nearly every possible topic as it pertains to Donkey Kong, Rare, or Platonic. This is just amazing. What I can't fathom is how each one really taps into the essential, the essential soul of what the topic is, while retaining the familiar motif of the Kongversation theme that we're all familiar with. I know you've rebuilt it from the ground up, but it's still very quintessentially the Kongversation theme. And
you've said that very nicely, Hyle.
I don't know anything about music. I just know I like good sounds. They make me clap, and I say,
yay. You explained it better than I could. Hey, listen, I can make this into something nice. So something I have always admired about you, Hyle, while we're licking each other's bumholes.
I love that. Eat that ass.
Is no, honestly, it's how happy you are to encourage creativity in others. Not just with me, obviously, but I've seen it often. You're very nurturing, Mr. Russell.
Well, I am the Donkey Kong daddy.
I mean it. I'm not being sarcastic.
Okay,
As a creative person yourself, I think it speaks highly of you. It would be remiss of me not to mention that you've not, as you said at the beginning of this episode, been scratching your ass the past couple of months. It would be remiss of me not to say that, because I know you've been hard at work on a little something which may or may not be of interest and excitement to DK Vine fans, and I don't know if you want to talk about it or not. But this is a roundabout way of saying thanks.
Yeah, no, you're welcome, Matt. You're welcome. You're one of the most talented people I know, and it's just such an amazing treat that you're on the team, and that you're my friend, and that this is the Tiki Tak Tribe variation of the Kongversation theme that you heard, which we will break out anytime there is a Retro Studios align.
That's probably a one-off, that one.
No. I mean, every time we talk about the Retro Studios era of Donkey Kong or even the theme park, it would be an apropos theme to break out. But we've got so many more, and part of the treat of this season, and maybe even beyond, because I don't know if we're going to get to all of them this season, is hearing a new Kongversation theme for the first time, or not knowing which one you're going to hear as you begin the episode. Should keep things lively. It should keep things on your toes, keep you on your toes even. And I think that it will really give a shot in the arm to the energy levels before each and every episode. But yeah, you did mention that I was working on something. I have been working on something. I'm still working on something. It's kind of a labor of love and kind of a Unabomber manifesto at the same time. It's
okay.
It's over an hour long. It's bordering on an hour 10 at this point. It's a video where I explain the Donkey Kong universe. And I give like full historical context to how the concept of the Donkey Kong universe evolved over the years. And I keep messing with it. Like I have theoretically, I'm like 10 more minutes to go for just base raw footage to edit. But I keep changing the script along the way, and I keep adding bits. So who knows how long it's going to take me, but it is a labor of love. It's been what I've been working on in the downtime, and I'm really excited for the inevitable premiere and the inevitable disappointment when people hate it.
You've been feeding me little previews of things you've been doing. I'm very excited about it, but I don't know how much I'm allowed to say about it. So I'm going to confine myself to saying nothing about it. Nothing!
If you would like to get ready for it, please subscribe on YouTube. We are
that's the listeners at home, not just me.
Yeah. DKVine.com/YouTube, or the other way around, reverse mirror mode.
Does the DKVine.com/PooTube URL still work?
Honestly, I forgot to change it when we got remonetized, so it probably still
I think it should link to a page that goes, DKVine.com/PooTube has been discontinued. Please go to DKVine.com/YouTube. Just make people press an extra link.
Well, I did promise at one point that on episode 2222, that's season 22, episode 22.
I remember it well.
of the conversation, we would do a character witness for the Great Mighty Pooh. So when that day comes, that will be what I redirect people to, dkmine.com/PoohTube.
Okay. So that's something to look forward to, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. I like to drop little breadcrumbs and be like, if you think this season of the conversation is good, wait for another 9 years. We're really going to knock your socks off in season 22.
Yep.
I really should stop promising those things, because what if I get hit by a bus, Matt?
You can't live your life that way, Hyle.
You really can. And I'm really I want the conversation to continue. I want the conversation to continue. If I don't get to ascend into pure spiritual energy and control the future of DK Vine on this plane of existence, I do want everything to continue in my absence. I mean, I'm leaving you the site, right? If something happens to me, so.
Well, I was wondering if when you do get hit by that bus, someone would have to sort of go to you as you breathe your dying breath and ask you to name your successor.
No, it's you, Matt. You would be in charge of. Yes. You don't have to host the conversation every week, but you have to. Yeah. Well, until the day comes where I get hit by that bus, we are supported by our patrons. First and foremost, I know I talked about YouTube monetization. We get some Twitch ad revenue, but primarily it's our patrons. It is our patrons that keep DK Vine running. And I want to thank all of our lovely patrons for keeping the dream alive. This is season 13 of The Conversation. What the hell? We could not do it without you. If you would like to become a DK Vine patron, go to dkvine.com/Patreon and just think about $1 a month. $1 a month helps keep the dream of independent Donkey Kong journalism alive. Think about that. And
some of the higher tiers offer such exciting rewards as hearing episodes of The Conversation, sections of audio recorded before the show gets started.
That's true. Because we do live stream these episodes for our $5 and up patrons. And I want to say really quick, hello to Me Muppet, March Rose, and S Monaco 14, or maybe it's Monaco 14. Or maybe it's SM Onico 14.
We've all got our own way of saying it.
We do.
But they are my favorite.
Yes.
Sorry, everyone else. I'm sorry. I can't help how I feel.
Yeah, you get to hear all the bits that we say that we then decide are junk and we put in the garbage bin.
This is a bit astonishingly that hasn't been cut out. Listen.
No, the fact that you said that now means I'm going to commit to it and leave it in the episode. How do you feel about that?
I'm pretty happy. Pretty happy.
All right, Matt, before we begin, I would also like to say a special thank you to all the people, because it was quite a few this time, who have reached out on social media saying how much you missed the conversation during our seasonal hiatus. Usually around mid-February, I'll start getting messages. When's the conversation coming back? And I've quite quit Twitter. I'm just on Blue Sky now, primarily. I mean, I'm still posting on Facebook, but I don't really check messages on Facebook. I'm primarily on Blue Sky, right? So many people reached out on Blue Sky and said, I need the conversation. Where the hell is the conversation? And I do appreciate that. I promised last November that I would not be bringing politics into the conversation all that much, because we all deserve a reprieve. We all deserve an escape from everything that's happening in the world. It's just overwhelming. And we could use that shelter from the storm. But I know from personal experience, I have experienced quite a lot of turmoil over the past couple of months, a lot of dread, a lot of uncertainty. And I know how something like our entertainment, our guilty pleasures, I assume we're a guilty pleasure. I know how much that can mean in times like this. And yes, we are just a dumbass podcast about Donkey Kong and his drooling friends, I put in the show notes. But that too can be a mental shelter from the storm, with an emphasis I might add, on mental.
Can I just say for the record that I don't find any of these pleasures to be guilty? I'm proud of my pleasures.
I am
Thank
too.
you. Please continue.
Honestly, like that's the thing though. Like you got to get to the point in your life where you can say, "I am proud to
where
be."
You can
to
proudly
be this.
pleasure yourself.
Yes, like Bumper the Badger.
Be more bumper. Hashtag be more bumper.
Hashtag be more bumper. The Conversation's back. We will be back with at least one new episode every week from here on out for the rest of 2025. And
bloody hell, sounds exhausting.
It is exhausting, Matt. That's why I'm not doing 2 a week for the first month back like I did last season. There will be weeks where we do 2 episodes or an episode and a mini or even 3 episodes. I'm feeling frothy about it. But for now, I'm just going to try to go easy on myself, ease our way back in. I think this is going to be a huge year for our little hobby, the DKU, because of course we have the Switch 2 coming. The Switch 2 Direct is next month. We have a confirmed new console Mario Kart coming. Donkey Kong's design is getting updated in the games. That's going to be a whole other discussion, Matt. Tune in next episode for our thoughts on that. Yeah, I'm leaving the little tantalizing breadcrumbs for people to keep tuning in.
What will DK Vine think of this?
What will DK Vine think of this? Will we hate it? Will we set our hair on fire? Will it be 2004 all over again? You'll just have to tune in next time to find out. I tell ya. But Donkey Kong Country is coming to Epic Universe in Universal Orlando Resorts. We have Yooka Replayly coming out, and Yooka Replayly is looking pretty damn fetching. We just got some news about the new Rextro 64S arcade games. They've completely rebuilt those from the ground up in new platforming challenges, which look amazing. I am really looking forward to Yooka Replayly. There's going to be a lot to discuss here on the Conversation, in addition to all the other little nostalgia things we like to peddle. Oh, here's a little bit of nostalgia for you. Do you remember 2005? Do you remember 1995?
Oh.
Ooh.
I love the past. Why can't I just live in the past? That's you, that is.
We can visit the past whenever we want. We just have to shut our eyes and imagine that we're there. And that's what we'd like to do. But before we go that far back in the past, we need to go back, 2 months to the release of Donkey Kong Country Returns HD, which was released for what we now have to say is the original Nintendo Switch on January 16th.
Thank you in particular, by the way, to the one bloke on Blue Sky who asked me if I would ever be on the Conversation again and added the DK Vine account. So this is for you. Are you happy? You happy with what you've done?
Honestly, like I wanted to have you on the show for quite a while now.
That person's going to think they've got power.
They do, yeah. It gives too much authority to the people who tag us on Blue Sky. But
I like that it was just one person there.
Part of the reason it's so hard to have you on is there is a time difference, a 5-hour time difference, but there's an ocean between us. And so just to make it work, just to casually like say, hey, Matt, can you be on the Conversation in 2 days? It requires some planning. And thankfully, couple things worked in our favor. Daylight savings time began in the Americas, but British summertime has not begun for you. So there's now only 4 hours difference between us as we record this episode.
I feel so close to you.
Yeah, I know, right? Strike while the iron is hot. 2, this is a topic that means a lot to you, Matt, Donkey Kong Country Returns in general. And it just seemed like perfect timing to have you back on the Conversation. So the Conversation is returning with the return to returns. We are discussing Donkey Kong Country Returns HD, our general impressions of the ports, the second port of Returns. And this has been divisive among the broader fan community. I know how I feel about it. I know how you feel about it, Matt, but I think like there has been some consultation. There's been some concern. There's been some strife and some debates in the broader Donkey Kong fan community, but also Nintendo fandom. We'll be getting into all of that, but I really wanted to address at the top just how terrific I feel Nintendo's marketing and advertising campaign for not only this release, but just the general season of Donkey Kong we find ourselves in has been. Because there's been quite a lot of Donkey Kong stuff recently because of the opening of Donkey Kong Country in Osaka, Japan, the forthcoming opening of Donkey Kong Country in Orlando, Florida, and just the release of Returns HD. We had the 30th anniversary of Donkey Kong Country last November. And so Nintendo did this wonderful Donkey Kong Country and Land retrospective video to pretty much hype up that every game in the Country and Land series, Barrel Maze notwithstanding, is now playable in some form or the other on the Nintendo Switch. And this is the kind of like fan service, this is the kind of loving tribute that we as Donkey Kong fans are not used to getting from Nintendo.
Yeah, it's really worth watching if you haven't seen it already. It's a sort of, they use sort of sprite and background assets from the Donkey Kong Country games, animate them themselves, and make the characters interact with one another in quite an entertaining fashion. It's been a while since I watched it, but I liked it at the time. There's two versions, I think. There was a version that came out before the Land games were released. Is that right? And then there was a second version that incorporated the Donkey Kong Land games. If I remembered that correctly, or is it?
I think it was Black Friday. Nintendo of Europe.
Oh yes,
their various affiliates released this video or uploaded this video, advertising that all 5 Donkey Kong Country games are now playable in some form on the Nintendo Switch, or will be come January 16th. And yeah, you had like manipulated sprites. You had like widescreen shots from the Donkey Kong Country games. You would have like K. Rool getting chased on the Gangplank Galleon by Donkey and Diddy, and then Dixie comes down and joins Diddy climbing up the rigging, up the ship mast, and then like
it's basically way more effort than you would usually expect from that sort of thing. The people who made that love these games, and that's gratifying. It signifies that Nintendo are proud of their Donkey Kong library.
Yeah,
proud. Yeah, I'm proud of my Donkey Kong library.
I am too, yeah. There's really a lot being put into the Donkey Kong brand right now. We got like all this merchandise rolling out, and a lot of that discussion will have to be tied into next episode and the Donkey Kong redesign and what it possibly means for the future of Donkey Kong. I'm sure you have your theories if you are a regular listener of the conversation and what we've been discussing for the last several years, but yeah, like you would have Dixie fall down onto the like pier from Donkey Kong Country 3, and then you would cut to Castle Chaos, and then like Donkey and Diddy would jump out of Chaos, and then Donkey Kong would run off. And in the original upload, he would run off into like Tropical Freeze from that point. But in the like latest version of the video, which was then uploaded by Nintendo of America's accounts, you would have you would have the Donkey Kong Land trilogy then interject between the hard cut between the Donkey Kong Country trilogy and Retro's 2 games. So then you would have the 3 Donkey Kong Land games being represented with not as much sprite work or anything, but still lovely to have them part of the discussion, part of the celebration. And so, yeah, it's just been really affirming as a Donkey Kong fan.
Yeah. Hey, by the by, do you reckon there is a small contingent of Donkey Kong fans, new Donkey Kong fans, who believe Donkey Kong Country Returns to be the sequel to Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze?
I'm sure there's that misconception among some, unless they like do the basest amount of research. I think
some people in Nintendo think that.
Well, they obviously had to like end the trailer with Donkey Kong Country Returns HD because that's what they're hyping up in the here and now.
Yeah.
That's the big ticket item for them. So
that's, by the way, listeners, is a way to find a way of complaining about something good.
Yeah, people like to consume content where people just complain about stuff. And we don't really complain all that much here at DK Vine anymore.
Yeah, I hate people that do that.
You know, I was really looking forward to this. And granted, this is a game I have played quite a few times in my life. I played it a couple times on the Wii. I played it a couple times when it came out as Donkey Kong Country Returns 3D in 2013 on a Nintendo 3DS. So it's not like this is like a whole new experience. We knew what to expect with Returns HD, but I was still looking forward to having it on my Nintendo Switch, having what is probably the definitive version of it, or is it the definitive version? We'll have that debate in a bit. But I was like, all right, January 16th, it's going to be a Donkey Kong day. It's going to be a day dedicated to Donkey Kong Country Returns HD. Nothing can trample on this moment. And in the typical reality of the Donkey Kong fan is something always comes along to trample on our moments. And in this case, it was Nintendo announcing the Switch 2 early in the morning on January 16th. And
on Donkey Kong Day, not on Donkey Kong Day. Nintendo.
Not only that, but it also came with the added caveats of that Mario Kart trailer or sneak peek of Mario Kart, because it wasn't even a trailer per se. And you got that glimpse of the Donkey Kong redesign and all of the discourse and debate that generated. And so it was just like, as a Donkey Kong fan coming back from Target, because I had to go out and buy it, Matt, because I don't get comp copies. I don't get press copies from Nintendo. They don't provide that benefit.
They still don't send you press copies.
No,
outrageous.
They don't. Outrageous.
Don't they know DK Vine is the internet's premier Donkey Kong fan empire?
For 25 years and running, I know. Yeah. But yeah, it turns out that we are viewed as small potatoes, little plantains compared to the actual influencers out there. And, you know, like, it's not like we're out in the dark, like, you know, Rare throws us a bone, Playtonic throws us a bone every now and then. You know, we are not completely bereft of support from the studios, but it is one of those things. And I pre-ordered Donkey Kong Country Returns HD pretty late because I was waiting to see what pre-order bonuses the Americas would get, because there were so many fabulous pre-orders for Europe. You could get Kong letter pins. And I was like, that's what I want to get. I want to wait to see which store offers the Kong letter pins here in the Americas. And it turns out none of them offered it. The only one with a pre-order bonus was GameStop Shutter, which was the DK Barrel Pen Pot. Now, here's the thing about the DK Barrel Pen Pot, Matt. The thing about that is there's been numerous configurations of the DK Barrel Pen Pot over the last year. There was a giant ceramic version of the DK Barrel Pen Pot being sold in Target.
I've got a mug that's very similar.
Yeah. Turns out you can stick a lot of things in DK barrels, and merchandisers have found that out. You could stick your coffee in them. You could stick your tea in them. You could stick pens in them. You could stick cookies in them.
Poison. You can put poison in there.
You could put poison in a DK barrel and give it to your hated enemy and wait for the magic to unfold. But I didn't want another DK barrel pen pot, Matt. I had to draw the line at the giant one I have on my desk right now that is honestly too big to economically house my pens. And I could go for a smaller pen pot, but then what do I do with my larger pen pot? I'm too attached to it.
I'd like the idea that they've produced this full-size barrel, this cumbersome ceramic 1-to-1 scale Donkey Kong barrel. You can fit up to 7,000 pens in this pen pot.
They knew what they were doing. They knew they screwed up, because on the packaging of the pen pot, they said you could also use this as a planter. You could stick a house plant in it. I'm like, well, hold up. If it's a house plant holder, then what are we doing calling it a pen pot? It's one or the other. So anyway.
They've really shot themselves in the, somewhere. A container can be used for many things. Most people understand that. It doesn't help to itemize some examples.
Yeah. The thing is, I also have a plush Donkey Kong clutching a DK barrel, and there's a hole in the DK barrel that you can put whatever you want in there. So I stick my caffeine pills, my calf tabs in the DK barrel. And so every morning
That's not where I thought you were going with that.
Well, if you want to do that, there's also the DK barrel sling being sold on DonkeyKong.com right now from Nintendo. So you can stick whatever you want in that sling. No judgments.
I was just so glad there's no judgments.
No judgments here. So anyway, long way to saying I waited to reserve or pre-order Donkey Kong Country Returns HD because I wanted those Kong letter pins. But it turns out only Europe got those Kong letter pins. So what was I left to do?
I feel like I've let the side down by not getting that for myself then. I didn't get those either.
And the thing is, I have enough Donkey Kong trash in my office, in my life. I have no room for any of this. They just announced a 2D statue from First Four Figures, and it looks incredible. And it's a giant, heavy statue of Tootie, Banjo's kid sister. And you know, I was thinking,
doesn't it weigh like 5 kilograms or something?
Yeah, you could bludgeon your foe to death with that if the poison doesn't work. So
many murder weapons on offer from the various merchandise streams.
Yeah. So I was thinking, you know, once upon a time, I would have definitely gotten that 2D statue, but I have too much stuff, and I need to be more economical about what stuff I bring home.
Yeah, you got to be discerning.
Yeah, I have to start cultivating only the finest fineries from DKU merchandisers. So anyway, I did not get a pre-order bonus because I didn't need a pen pop, but I had to then reserve it from somebody who was still accepting pre-orders from it. And GameStop was like out. You can no longer pre-order from GameStop. You can no longer pre-order from Target. You can no longer pre-order from most outlets. And you can still pre-order from Best Buy. So I decided to pre-order.
This is heartbreaking. Will Hyle get a copy of Donkey Kong Country Returns HD? Stay tuned and find out. Did he ever get a copy? Did he ever get it?
I did, because I would not be recording this episode. Well, I wouldn't be recording this episode, given my first impressions.
You could bluff your way through.
That's true. I have played the game before. That is true.
Yeah.
But
okay, I'm suspicious.
What I ended up doing is I ended up pre-ordering it from Best Buy, because the last time I pre-ordered something from BestBuy.com, it is the Best Buy, so I thought, well, I can't go wrong. But
it says so in the name.
The last time I did that was Super Mario Party Jamboree, because you got a nice tote bag, and Donkey Kong was one of the characters on the tote bag. And I was like, I can tote with Donkey Kong now. This is great. So I got that the day it came out. It arrived. And honestly, then Mario vs. Donkey Kong, even before that, it arrived the night before it came out. So I was like, I can't go wrong.
This is confusing me.
I'm going to pre-order
the night before it came out.
Yeah. It came early. It came early, like Bumper did when he was being handcuffed by the authorities. So I had to make a decision. I ordered from BestBuy.com thinking it would, at the very least, arrive the day of, but if I was lucky, it would arrive a day before. Well, then I got the notification, 2 a.m., the day it was coming out, and it said, your package will be shipped tomorrow. You'll be getting it on Saturday. And I was like, that is unacceptable. I have to write a review for this game today. So I had to get up and drive to Target to be there when they opened and say, like a just freak, I had to show up.
This is like, I don't know if you've seen the Arnold Schwarzenegger film Jingle All the Way. It's like that.
It's exactly like Jingle All the Way.
Exactly
in fact,
like that.
Sinbad was there as well. We had to fight over the 6 copies of the game they had.
Because both of you wanted all 6 copies.
And Matt, just to paint a picture of the general dystopia that we find ourselves in. So a lot of these big box stores, they don't adequately staff people anymore. Like they don't have...
It's just robots, isn't it?
Well, they have the self-checkout, but they don't have...
Mr. Russell, what would you like tonight?
That's a robot.
That's a great robot, Matt. You'd be right at home
Thank
here.
you.
But they don't have a lot of people working, and the people who are working, they do a terrific job. They do what they can, but they're stretched thin. So you show up at the electronics department where they have the video games, and you need to get somebody's attention, and they have the little bell to ring. That like.
Oh no, I hate that.
I know, and I was like, I feel like such an asshole right now because there is somebody hard at work doing a thankless job that's underpaid. And here I am.
Ding, 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 ding.
Here I am.
Where's my service?
Yeah, I'm this asshole showing up. I've worked retail in the past. I know how it is. I'm some asshole showing up, demanding that they hand over their Donkey Kong Country Returns HD. So anyway, I finally get this person's attention. They come over. Very, very nice. And I said, could I pick up a copy of, and I didn't want to seem like I was too much of a freak. So instead of saying I would like Donkey Kong Country Returns HD, I was like, did you get the new Donkey Kong game in? Kept it very casual.
That's very nicely done. And that's why you've got another copy of Mario versus Donkey Kong on the Switch. Is that right?
So he said, what he said was, oh, I don't think that comes out until tomorrow. And I said, no, I'm pretty sure it comes out today.
If this were a film at that moment, there'd be a kind of trolley zoom on your face at that point.
And finally, I saw
internalize your rage.
I saw the in-store signage for it, and I was like, oh yeah, look, January 16th. And it was like, okay, it looks like they haven't put it out. Let me go in the back and check to see if we got any copies in. And so it was an awkward 5 minutes of me just ambling about the electronics department, trying to.
By the way, were you wearing your Diddy Kong t-shirt at this point?
Well, that's the kicker of the story, because I'm trying to keep it super casual, right? I'm trying to keep it like I am not some self-avowed Donkey Kong journalist, because it's embarrassing that I don't get a copy from Nintendo then, but it's also embarrassing that I'm a Donkey Kong journalist, because I don't know how many people are going to hear that and think, oh yeah, this person, is
not, a Donkey Kong journalist is not a thing. What are you talking about? Yeah, that's not me saying that. That's the people you're confronted with saying that, not me.
Right, yeah, and if I say it, they're going to think this person's going to strangle me and eat my eyeballs. So, anyway, finally comes out with all the games they got, with all the copies they got in, and it's like, oh yeah, do you want to pick out which one you want? And I was like, yeah, this one looks great. And he's ringing me up. I completely forgot I'm wearing my rare jacket, my rare wear.
No, I ruined the end of your story with my preemptive mockery.
That's fine. We're on the same wavelength. It happens. I was wearing my Rareware jacket from Fangamer. So he looks at my jacket. He looks at the Rare logo, and he just you can see the realization set in that this person wearing a Rare jacket is showing up at 9 a.m. at Target, buying Donkey Kong Country Returns HD.
And then you see the guy sort of press the button under the desk for security. This seems fine. I guess seems all in order.
He was very nice about it, and he said, wow, you really like Rare, huh? And I said, you don't know the half of it, buddy.
Really?
Yeah. So that was my story there.
So you threatened a shopkeeper?
No, it was a chummy buddy, pal of mine, Buddy Roo, friendo. It's very nice.
Well, I think the conclusion of that story is Hyle Russell is a very cool guy. And anyone who says that he's not is lying.
It's also one of the first in-shop purchases I've made in 4-5 years, even outside of groceries. I generally just buy everything off websites now, right? I just got in the habit during the pandemic of doing. So the fact that I had to show up in person, and by the way, I got a second copy from Best Buy. Then I never returned it. I bought the game twice.
Wow. So, you could offer it as a competition prize.
I might do that. I'm sitting on it. I might do that. But yeah, I was initially
if you sat on it, you could offer it for an even more exciting prize. This copy has touched Hyle Russell's bum. Sorry for saying bum.
No, that's all right. Freshly licked Hyle Russell Bum. No, I was thinking, and this is an insight into how my brain works. I was thinking, okay, so I will have the receipt from Target. Target is closer. I can then return the copy from Best Buy to Target as if it were the copy I bought from Target with my receipt from Target, and I'll be able to, recoup my money. But the person was so nice getting it for me that I did not want to do that. And I was like, you know what? No, I'll just eat the loss.
Because the guy at the shop was nice to you and or threatened by you.
Either way, I didn't want to ruin his day because the freak who showed up...
another one of his days.
Right, the freak who showed up at 9 a.m. asking him for Donkey Kong, then returned Donkey Kong, and that wouldn't be true to the spirit of my jacket. So
it would be so good if it was the same bloke as well. And the second day you come wearing a full Donkey Kong costume, by which I mean wearing nothing apart from a tie.
I mean, you can get a Donkey Kong character jacket now on DonkeyKong.com that is a hoodie, and you put it up over your head, and it looks like you've got Donkey Kong's hair. You can get that, I think it's been pointed out, possibly by Cameron, that it's a travesty that a Donkey Kong tie is not just something you can buy. Yeah.
I've made one.
You've made one, yes.
With pride. Yeah.
I'm sure they've sold it at maybe like Nintendo New York or various places, but they never like readily sold it on their website. So,
travesty.
It is a travesty.
What else do you want to talk about?
Probably we should talk about the game. Probably get around to that at this point.
I'm happy to do that. Yeah, because unlike Nintendo, we've got our priorities straight. When faced with the choice of whether to open a new season of The Kongversation with an episode on the Switch 2, or starting it with an episode about a port on a 15-year-old Donkey Kong game, we choose wisely. We prioritize Donkey Kong.
We choose wisely, or we choose Yamamoto-e in this case.
That is a brilliant joke.
No, it's not.
Clap.
I'm also very bad at clickbait. I'm very bad at gaming the algorithm. So, you know what? I don't care. I have to keep true to my ethos here.
We could change the title of this episode to, "Is this the best Switch 2 game ever?"
It could be. I mean, it might be one of the best Switch 2 games you can get at launch because you can play Switch games on the Switch 2.
Exactly, that's how you get them. It doesn't have to be factually accurate, the title of the video. It just has to make idiots click on it. That's all we've got to do.
I came home with my copy, my second copy, but the first in my hand, of Donkey Kong Country Returns HD. And then I immediately got online. I was like, all right, it's time to do some shit post on Blue Sky about Donkey Kong Country Returns HD. It's time to start playing it. It's time to start crafting my review. I was going to live stream a bit of the game either later that day or the next day, and my computer briefly died later that day. That was a whole thing as well. I had to finish my review on my tablet, which was very, very challenging, but I got my computer working again, and it was a happy ending after all, but it was a very stressful day because I came home and I saw Nintendo announce the Switch 2, and there was all this chat about Donkey Kong's design, and all of a sudden I had to simultaneously work on two very big stories at the same time, basically spinning plates, and it was a rough day. It was a rough day. I did not get to really appreciate Donkey Kong Country Returns HD.
Didn't get to enjoy it. Hey, so speaking of news stories, I've got a news story that might have gone under DK Vine's radar, and it's something I'd like to spring on you.
Okay.
I want to get your live reaction.
I'm excited. I'm excited to hear what this is.
Yeah? Yeah. Did you know that as part of the promotion cycle for this game in January, Nintendo of America finally bestowed official names upon the members of the Tiki Tak Tribe? Did you know that?
Do you mean the Tiki High Priest? The
yeah.
8
Kalimba,
or 7
pan
characters?
flute, xylophone. Yeah.
wasn't this like data mined from the original returns? Like, didn't we already know about this?
I think a couple of them were, but I think some of them are new creations. So don't look it up. I want a pure reaction from you.
I already know these, Matt, but okay, yeah.
Shut up! I will say the Mario Wiki has already embraced these names, so don't look on there.
No,
to explain. So on their Instagram account, in a post entitled Choose Your Baddie, in which they invite their followers to ponder the question, who's your pick for baddiest baddie? They name the Tiki Tak Tribe members as follows, and I've slightly changed the order of these because there's a couple I want to save until last.
Yeah.
And you'll see why.
I already know these, but I'll play along.
You don't know them! Shut your face! Right. Kalimba is now called Crazy Kalimba.
Mm-hmm.
Spelt with a K.
With a K.
What do you think about that?
I think it's dumb.
It's alliterative. It's not the worst. Pan flute is now called Wacky Pipes. That's less good, isn't it?
So, like, I knew all 7 of these going into this. Wacky Pipes is probably my least favorite. I absolutely hate Wacky Pipes. And you know why that is, Matt? Because, honestly...
Not alliterative.
It was not alliterative. Also, I absolutely love pan flutes. I feel like the pan flute...
A great design, yeah.
Yeah, the pan flute is an instrument that, for whatever reason, just speaks to my soul. So I loved having pan flute in the name. Wacky Pipes does not properly convey what a pan flute sounds like or makes you feel.
Yeah, the transcendency isn't conveyed in the phrase wacky pipes.
Wacky Pipes.
I see what you mean. Now, this is an okay one, actually. Xylophone is now called Xylobone.
Why is he Xylobone, though? That's what I want to know.
He's made of bones.
Is he made of bones? I thought, like...
He's sort of, yeah. He looks like a bit skeletal, like the skeleton baddies of the world he governs. He priests over.
It sounds like he's got a 12-inch erection that makes different noises when you hit different bits of it.
That is disgusting what you've just said. It's a family show.
Oh, is this a family show now? Is that the big change for season 13 beyond the theme song and the album artwork? Yeah. Oops.
Yeah. It's a clever pun is what I wanted to say about that. Okay. Accordion is now simply cordion. That I think... I don't know what's going on with that one.
It's like they lost steam and they couldn't say it
but at the beginning.
In full. Yeah, so they conserve energy.
An apostrophe at the beginning, so it's cordion.
No, it's just cordion. It's just, that's awful. These suck. I hate them.
Well, you might be about to change your mind, so I've saved the best to last. Banjo. Now, it's quite confusing that we've got 2 characters in the pantheon of Donkey Kong Universe characters called Banjo. So it's good that Nintendo of America have decided to rename Banjo to something else. What do you think they've decided to rename Banjo to?
I have to play dumb. I have to play dumb. I can't give the real answer that I already know.
Banjo is now called Banjo Bottom. It's good, isn't it?
Again, why? Like,
I don't understand.
What? Okay. I mean, he is a banjo bottom. The banjo bit is on this bottom, but
is that a transatlantic thing? Does it not mean the same thing in America, or is it? I think Americans use the word bottom, don't they?
Bottom usually means ass or bum. Yeah. Right.
Okay. It's just. Anyway, my favourite by a country mile is Gong. Would you like to hear what Gong is called?
Gong O. I just spoiled it.
Oh, Russell! You're not playing correctly!
Matt. Okay. I remember when this was first, like, properly data mined from returns. And I was, like, sitting in LAX waiting to come back from some E3. And
why have I only just found out about this?
Somebody kept DMing me and being like, you need to update your gallery. You need to update your names. You need to update the website. These are the real names for the Tiki Tak Tribe. And I remember fixating on Gong-O.
Gongo. That's the sort of name we'd come up with as a joke.
Yeah, I was waiting at my terminal, fixating on Gong O, and absolutely hoping my plane would crash.
Other candidate names included Gongles, Gongo Pongo, and Gongy McGongface. That's my joke.
I mean, yeah, I think they're all shit names. I preferred just them being named after their instrument. There's something clean and simple about it. I'm glad they're all dead. I'm glad they all sacrificed themselves at the end of Returns, because at the very least, we won't have to deal with them in the future. We won't have to hear Xylabone ever again in a Donkey Kong game. Thank God.
The maracas are called the Maraca Gang, if anyone wanted to know. They didn't bother individually naming them.
Yeah, no, I think our fanon should stand there, because individually they're named Maraka. Yeah, Maraka, or Kas. Yeah, Kas. I think that's great. I think that's beautiful. I think that's a level of insight that transcends Gong-O, which, yes, sounds like a shit name we would come up with, but we would spell it differently. We would spell it just Gong-O.
Just one O. Yeah.
No hyphen, no O-H. Yeah.
Well, sorry for wasting your time with that. I was so excited when I saw that on Nintendo of America's Instagram. I couldn't believe I'd seen something that you hadn't even put in your show notes. I thought, this is going to be brilliant. I'm going to spring this on Hyle at the beginning of the episode. It's going to blow his little mind. You've seen them all already. It's just so depressing.
Matt, I'm a Donkey Kong journalist. You know I knew about this ahead of time. You can't surprise me in matters of Donkey Kong. Not really.
One of these days.
Yeah, one of these days you'll probably get me, but I mean, you do have like a 4-hour and soon to be 5-hour head start on me every morning, so.
But like the tortoise and the hare, that doesn't work. Like the Rodney and the Lanky Kong.
There we go. Yes. And hopefully Nintendo never comes forth and says that the racing hare in Donkey Kong 64 is not named Rodney, because I think that would just break my spirit.
It's called Hare-O.
Haro, yeah. So when Donkey Kong Country Returns HD was announced last June, there was admittedly quite a bit of disappointment from large sections of the fandom. Not from the editorial viewpoint of DK Vine.
No, not from me.
Not from me either. Like I was saying in my, not E3, my Stinky Ape Summer preview episode, like what can Nintendo show off in their big June Direct? I was saying, I really hope they do an HD port of Donkey Kong Country Returns for the Switch.
Yeah, I've wanted Donkey Kong Country Returns to be on the Switch for ages.
Yeah.
I thought it was interesting what Dustin said on the last episode of the Conversation, last series, about how he is going to get the game, but he's not particularly hyped for it. I hope I'm not misrepresenting you there, Dustin. You can hit me if you feel I am. But by the way, if you haven't listened to the last episode of the Conversation, why are you listening to this? Go back and listen to the last episode! Have you done it? Okay. Anyway, what Dustin said was that the reason he wasn't quite so excited about it was that the Idaho crew had just streamed it about a year or so ago, and it was too soon. It was too soon to revisit it. The absence hadn't made the heart grow fonder, which I thought was, well, interesting. I have not really played the game all the way through since, I suppose, since the immediate wake of Returns 3D, so 2013, maybe 2014. So 11 years. I don't know. I thought it was interesting, but yeah, I'm very excited to have it on the on a home console with the controls I favor.
Same. Like, for me, there was always the debate for the last 11, going on 12 years, about which version of Returns, the original Wii release or Returns 3D on the 3DS, which one was the definitive version, because you had pros and you had cons, depending on which version you played. And so to marry them both, to have a version with the button controls, if you choose, you can also play it with the Joy-Cons and a semblance of the original controls, to have the original content from Returns 3D, to have like the better frame rates, to have upgraded visuals. It's long overdue. And it's also been an open question, right? Since we really got confirmation of the Donkey Kong Country theme park. It's like, well, this is primarily based on Donkey Kong Country Returns. There's a bit of Tropical Freeze in there and some slight nods to the original Donkey Kong Country as well. I mean, Minecart Madness, but primarily, visually, it is Donkey Kong Country Returns.
Yeah, it's a shame it's taken a multi-million-dollar theme park extension to kick Nintendo's collective bottoms into gear and make the game being released happen.
They're banjo bottoms, yeah.
Yeah, we keep saying bottom. It's really inappropriate for this show.
Sorry, we're a family show now, Matt. So says you a few minutes ago.
Yeah. I might have to revise that opinion. I've changed.
We'll see. We'll see if we can keep it nice and clean and PG until the end of the episode. It'll be a good test to see how we fare for the rest of the season.
Yeah. So don't fucking swear, all right?
Well, I said in my review of the game on DK Vine, because I wrote a written review mostly on a tablet for DK Vine. I said in my review that I'd gotten to the
biblical times.
Well, yeah, like in the times of Moses or Jonah or the whale that ate Jonah or Judas.
Abraham? Oh, that's one of them.
No, Abraham's like the main one, right? It's the Abraham universe, right?
He's the OG Bible bloke, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, Judaism, Christianity, Islam, that whole shared universe, that's his doing. So I said in my review on DK Vine that I had gotten to the point where I was finding myself nostalgic for Donkey Kong Country Returns, and the point in my life when it was coming out and it was the big new rallying point for our community. I mean, I've said this before. It was Donkey Kong Country Returns that really birthed the second act of DK Vine. It realigned how the site would operate with us as adults. And of course, I've been tinkering with that since 2010, but it really was the point where DK Vine stopped being this thing that Chad and I created in high school, and it became this thing that existed alongside our lives as adults. And that's where we brought in a crop of staffers still with us today, mind you. You,
more
Matt,
or less.
Yeah, you, Matt, joined us. Cameron joined us. Jeff joined us. Joe joined us. And Joe is kind of on a self-imposed leave of absence right now. Joe's still on the staff, but I think Joe is just not interested, considering we haven't had any new standalone games of any grand significance for quite a while.
Too busy playing old versions of Tomb Raider games.
Yeah. Yeah, that's where Joe's interest primarily lies. But Joe is welcome to do anything for DK Vine at any point. So I still count Joe. But I mean, this group of staffers who would then go on to define the website and our podcast and our various streams and forms of entertainment from there on in.
Yeah, I mean, maybe it's self-indulgent to sort of be talking about ourselves like this, but, who else can we talk about?
I think it's pretty significant that 15 years later, you have all been around for longer than half of DK Vine's existence.
It just means a lot of time's passed, and I don't approve. I'm not very happy about it. But yeah, you're right. It was the original release of Returns in 2010 that reignited my interest in the Donkey Kong universe, and by extension, my participation on https://www.dkvine.com. It's been very, very nostalgic revisiting the game all these years later. When it first arrived in the post, I might have told you about this in private, but I'll say it on this. It was just after Christmas, if you remember, or the holidays for our American listeners.
The festive season, Matt. The festive season.
Sorry. I had my Christmas decorations up still. Sorry, festive decorations up still.
You can celebrate Christmas. That's fine.
Right.
Don't forget about the Hanukkah decorations or the solstice decorations.
Yeah. I've just taken down my Pancake Day decorations, for example. You may be interested to hear I got the game for Christmas in 2010. So it's funny to think Mum and Dad were still essentially buying me toys at the embarrassingly late age of 25. But it's also weird to have that sort of link between now and then. There I was then in 2010 on Christmas Day playing Donkey Kong Country Returns. And here I am now in January 2025 with the Christmas decorations still up playing Donkey Kong Country Returns. And I think the weirdest thing to me is that 2010 still feels quite recent to me.
Oh, yeah.
Is that an insane thing to say?
No, it's
How
not.
can you feel nostalgia for something that came out in the year 2010? 2010 is the modern age. 2010 is the future. It doesn't make sense to me at all. And yet, the milk of nostalgia is dripping out of my nipples.
Yeah.
I was worried about where that sentence was going, and then it went where I was worried it was going, and I completed the sentence, and now I live in regret.
I was going to finish it for you if you weren't going to step up and have the courage to finish it. But obviously we've talked about, like Josh Wallen and I have talked about quite a bit on this show, how the passage of time dramatically speeds up the older you get. And so, 2010 seems far more recent than 1995 felt in 2010. I mean,
Sure.
1995 seemed like several lifetimes in the past, where 2010 feels like it was just last month. So it is weird to be nostalgic for it, but then when you actually stop and take stock of everything that's happened in the time since then.
Things have changed a little bit since 2010.
Yeah, 2010 actually was a different era. And
yeah, it really was.
I think about where I was in 2010 and, the golden glow of nostalgia where everything just seems better because you selectively edit out the hard times or the day-to-day anxieties or just the quibblesome stuff, and you just really retain the good. If you are fortunate to have good times, then that will be what really sticks in the front of your brain. And so, 2010 was a time in my life that wasn't even all that great for me, personally speaking. I mean, just to be frank, my lifelong struggles with depression kind of hit a breaking point in 2010, and I began contemplating ending my life. And I got help. I recognized that I actually have bipolar 2 and that these ebbs and flows are just actually part of my brain chemistry and how to manage that. Sometimes not very well, but how you can live a full productive life with the illness.
And even knowing it's a chemical imbalance doesn't necessarily help in the moment.
No. But even with all that going on, which kind of happened later in the year, I still look back at 2010 and I think, it feels like a much simpler, much more optimistic time than today. And thinking about the hype for returns and just little moments in time that I savor, like going on my first E3 bear hike. That morning, morning Donkey Kong Country Returns was announced, and I saw a bear.
I love your E3 bear hike, and I love that you've kept doing it even long after the death of E3.
Right. I haven't seen any bears, I think, since 2019, so maybe the bears went away when E3 went away. I don't know.
Yeah, they've ascended to their home planet. I was thinking about this, so there aren't any bears in Britain, but the largest predatory mammals that exist in this country are badgers. So I would like to encourage all of our British listeners to join me in the Stinky Ape Summer Badger Walk. And if anyone sees a badger, then that means, I don't know, someone from Diddy Kong Racing will get another game.
Right. I mean, there's a lot of connotations when it comes to badgers and the DKU. So it could only really mean good things for Diddy Kong Racing or its cast.
Yes, it's a much more specific, supernaturally powered hike, but more rewarding, I think. Yours is just a general sense that something nice will happen.
At least there are bears in the Donkey Kong series, like outside of Banjo, so we can kind of hedge our bets there. But Returns came out, and I think what's often lost with the passage of time is the context of the time period of years gone by. And so a lot of the discourse, a lot of the discussion around Donkey Kong Country Returns has gotten overtly negative in not even recent years. I would say even since before Tropical Freeze came out, where people nitpick, and sometimes rightfully so, but they pick apart all the things that Donkey Kong Country Returns didn't do satisfactory for the fandom.
Right,
yeah, and I think it's important, though, to remember what this game did mean to the fandom in 2010, coming off of the immediate years following the buyout era, and specifically the drama surrounding Donkey Kong Jungle Beat. And we know much of that drama now was falsified, mistranslated interviews, a lot of anti-Rare hysteria that was being fanned by outlets like IGN, and then being run with in these mistranslated interviews. So the whole impetus behind Jungle Beat became this insidious thing in the minds of the fandom. And I've obviously come around quite a bit on Jungle Beat in the last decade and a half, even before we found out that interview was a bunch of hokum. It was not done maliciously, Jungle Beat. There wasn't any vendetta against the Rare cast. It was the fact that Jungle Beat was so weird and so different that they felt it not appropriate to incorporate the Donkey Kong Country characters.
Well, yeah. I don't think if it weren't for Returns coming back that DK Vine would be what it is now. And I don't think Donkey Kong fandom in general would be what it is now.
No, it definitely wouldn't.
You've said on several occasions now, and it's worth reiterating, that Donkey Kong Jungle Beat is great. It's a fun game. I've had a go on it myself since. I didn't play it at the time. It is a fun game, but can you imagine an alternate world where that was the direction the series went in? I'm not convinced any of this nonsense would have been perpetuated. And by nonsense, I mean this website.
Absolutely not. It's as a one-off with some salve on our wounds from the time being applied. We can go back and say, yeah, Jungle Beat was actually great. But in the context, in the turmoil, it really was a tempest in a teapot situation where there was all of this anti-Rare revisionism. And a lot of this was due to the buyout and Rare no longer being affiliated with Nintendo, and people didn't have the full story, so they were pointing fingers, and it became, it's like the breakup of the Beatles, Matt. I'm sorry to bring up the Beatles again, but it really does remind me of a lot of the misconceptions that were around in the early 1970s, where the person who was trying to keep the Beatles together until the bitter end was Paul McCartney. And it was John who really pulled the plug on the Beatles in September 1969, said at a meeting, I'm done. I quit the band. I want a divorce. And they kept it quiet until April 1970 when Paul announced he was done with the Beatles as well. But then Paul became the villain. Paul became the person who broke up the Beatles, and poor John, George, and Ringo were left out in the cold. And so I view the buyout in those terms as well, where the villain was Rare for leaving Nintendo when in fact Nintendo declined to purchase Rare. And Rare couldn't justify their operational costs without having the safety net of being outright owned by the person they were making games for. So
that Beatles analogy was definitely worth it. I was really wondering where you were going with that.
So people blamed Rare. Nintendo fans blamed Rare, and the easiest thing to do.
Perfect.
The easiest thing to do was then retroactively say all Rare's games were shit. Donkey Kong Country was never good.
All Paul McCartney's songs were rubbish. The only good ones were the Lennon-penned ones. Yeah, it works. Every angle you look at it, it works. Please continue.
Eventually, you have the critical reevaluation with enough passage of time, and Wings is doing a sold-out international tour in the mid-'70s, and then Who's Laughing Then? But it's...
Yeah.
It really is like my dual passions here, the DKU and the Beatles. I can often find links between the two.
Well, I can do a Doctor Who one if you like.
I would love a Doctor Who one.
Donkey Kong Country Returns is a bit like when they brought back when they brought back Doctor Who in 2005, and what they did was just a bare bones revival. Just a few of the key elements, the TARDIS, Doctor Who, the Assistant, the Daleks, but none of the other continuity burdens from the original series. And then gradually over time, they brought those various things back.
Yeah. It's a bit like Donkey Kong Country Returns, the way they only brought back Donkey Kong, Diddy Kong, and Cranky Kong.
Change my voice there. Your one's better than my one. Your one's, I'll admit, I'm a big man, I'll admit it. Your one was better than my one.
But it's still apropos because especially Doctor Who was probably the earliest that I can think of a soft reboot. And that would be a big trend then in the 2010s. Soft rebooting a franchise, bringing back just the barest, returning elements, but making a revival that thematically feels very much like an earlier entry. I think the culmination of all of that was The Force Awakens in 2015, which was, we're just going to bring back Han Solo, Leia, a couple of the droids, but we're going to make a movie that follows the beats of the original Star Wars, which Donkey Kong Country Returns does the same with the cast and then follows the beats of the original Donkey Kong Country.
This is an amazing episode. We've done the Beatles, Doctor Who, and Star Wars.
We've done them all.
In mere minutes as well. Yeah.
Yeah.
So don't forget to rate this episode on iTunes. It's not called iTunes anymore, is it?
It's Apple Podcast now.
Yeah.
Another change.
I live
between
in 2010.
Now
that's the problem.
2010. Yeah. So yeah, Returns, as bare bones as it was, coming off of the drama of the buyout era, the just absolute bare minimum that Jungle Beat was. Jungle Beat was just Donkey Kong and the banana. And
of course.
People look at say the Payon games and say, well, there's still plenty happening for your interest during that period. And while that was true, you have to remember that the Payon games were very low budget, not advertised. They just kind of popped up and they were barely acknowledged by Nintendo. You didn't have a several month advertising campaign across the internet for DK King of Swing. So
do you get this? Do you sometimes think Nintendo's embarrassed by the Donkey Kong series? Every once in a while, I wonder.
Maybe save that thought for just a little bit as we discuss some of the quibbles of Returns and Tropical Freeze, but
I'll forget. Whatever thought that was, I've forgotten it already.
At the time, having a mainline Donkey Kong game that embraced Donkey Kong Country, and that, it just had Diddy, Cranky, Rambi, and Squawks coming back alongside Donkey Kong, but that still felt very validating. That still felt like, okay, it's better than what we did have with Jungle Beat. And, the resentment would set in later, but in 2010, it still felt like a win. And you have to remember too, Donkey Kong Country Returns, more than just pacify an aging fan base, it created a new generation of Donkey Kong Country, and even Donkey Kong Universe fans. How many people that we know of who have reached out to us over the years, the last 15 years, came to all of this because of Donkey Kong Country Returns, and then later discovered the connections via Diddy Kong Racing, and then got into Banjo-Kazooie, or Conker, or Star Fox Adventures, or Grab by the Ghoulies, or Viva Pinata.
Not many people for the last two, but a few for the others, yes.
Yes. So you have to remember that for a lot of people, Donkey Kong Country Returns is the premier Donkey Kong game.
People keep being born. That's the thing, Hyle. As long as time keeps going, more people keep appearing on the planet.
Yeah.
And I'm struggling to come to terms with it, but I think I'm getting my head around it. I don't know about you.
It's hard. It's hard to remember that, like, babies who are being born today will be 18 years old come 2043.
Do you know old people, Hyle? Do you know old people?
I do know old people.
We're going to be one of those ones one day. That's going to be us.
That's why I've stopped bashing the elderly, because the fear.
The cold hand of death is on your shoulder.
And here's the thing. I want to be a cool, stylish old person, which probably means I have to cut my hair once in a while.
Maybe trade in that rare hoodie for, I don't know, a ripped t-shirt. I don't know what people wear these days.
Well, I don't know what they'll wear in 40 to 50 years either.
Oh yeah, probably a silver jumpsuit, isn't
it? Probably.
That sounds like the sorts of thing people would wear in 2010.
So yeah, now more than 14 years
I'm confused
later.
about when the future is.
Yeah, that's fine, because we're talking about a game from January that's a game from 2013 that's actually a game from 2010. I don't really have a good tether to when the present is at the moment. But more than 14 years after the original Donkey Kong Country Returns, like, being an old timer in this fan community, somebody who was around when Donkey Kong Country, the original, came out, I'm finding that characters like Professor Chops or Bonehead Jed, you know that one, Matt? Bonehead Jed?
Bonehead Jed.
Bonehead Jed.
One of the cliff baddies, right?
One of the dinosaur fossils reanimated, yeah. Or let's see, what's another good one? Well, the Maracas Gang.
I've got a favourite.
Yeah.
The Maracas Gang. No, you can't have them. You can if you want, I don't know. My favourite is Tiki Boulder.
Tiki Boulder.
Yeah, the fiery boulder that chases you in. I can't remember the level. It's not Boulder Roller. It's a different one.
No, it's the boulder roller that it's not called boulder roller, but there's a boulder that rollers after you for sure.
Yeah.
And that one.
That's it.
It's the Tiki Boulder.
Tiki Boulder. I love Tiki Boulder.
I'm finding, like, warm pangs of nostalgia. Not as much as the Rare era characters, but I still have a lot of love for these various deviants, and it is remembering where I was.
I like Orcs.
Ox, yeah, Rocks, Frogoons, Hopgoons. I know some of these characters. But yeah, like, I remember when Donkey Kong Country Returns was all we had. Like, Rare was still making Kinect sports games, and the future of that studio was kind of in question. It was kind of perpetually on the bubble, right?
Well, yeah, it was pretty cool in Mario Kart 7. Mario Kart 7, correction, when they had a Donkey Kong themed track. And for the first time, possibly ever in the history of Mario Kart, the Donkey Kong track looked a bit like the Donkey Kong Country game it was closest to.
That's right.
It had the little tikis in it. Little tiki goons.
Tiki goons. It had Frogoons. Screaming Pillars.
Golden Temple. All that.
Golden Temple, yeah.
And it was only a couple of years after the game, and yeah, I think we were pretty pleased at the time. Pretty pleased.
It's easy to forget the time period between Returns coming out and Tropical Freeze coming out, where Rare wasn't really the Rare we remembered and wouldn't be again for a while. Playtonic had yet to form. And so really all we had was Returns.
We put all our hopes in Retro Studios.
Yeah, and that somehow sustained us for 3 years' time.
And that 3 years feels like quite a long time in my head.
Yeah.
I feel like quite a lot happened then. Maybe the actual truth is not very much happened. But
now, quite a bit happened in those years. We were able to make our own fun.
Yes, exactly that. I will say that in preparation for this episode, as well as playing through the new HD version, I have gone back to the original Wii version and played through quite a bit of that again. because it really has been a while, and what better way to get a sense of what's changed, what's improved, what's not. So I do have a couple of things I wanted to talk about.
Yeah, I would love to do a direct comparison.
Yeah. Well, okay. Let's get this out of the way. The first thing I'd like to say, and I know it comes up often, but I think even if it were the most obvious thing anyone could possibly say, it would still be worth saying, and saying again. The motion controls really are a fucking nightmare. I think we forget just about how bad they were. They say, probably this isn't true, but they say that women, after giving birth, delete the memory of the experience from their brains in order that they're not deterred from reproducing again. I'm not sure if that's true, but it is one of the things that people say. I'd have to ask a woman who's given birth, and I'm not really sure how to broach the subject. But my point is, I think we've all deleted the experience of Donkey Kong Country Returns' motion controls from our brains. And we did, I don't know, what do you think? We sort of made peace with them in the end, didn't we? I think I certainly grew accustomed to them. And I got quite good at it. And it sort of became, I don't want to say second nature, but we got our heads around it. But now, after, what were we about to say? Were you about to say something?
I was going to say, yeah, I think that obviously it was an adjustment, those motion controls. And eventually it became almost second nature. But motion controls, they really were of the era, right? Like, it turns out
exactly that.
They were mostly a fad. And once we left behind that fad.
A fad. Like 3D, of which more later.
Yeah. Having a Donkey Kong Country game, such an important game to the evolution of the series and the continual presence of the series, having a game like that
tied to motion controls.
To motion controls, it really did feel like a egregious error that at the very least they should have built the game around regular controls and have the motion controls be a fun bonus if you really wanted.
I mean, we've had 3 iterations of Retro Studios flavored Donkey Kong Country games without motion controls. So to go back and have to use them again is quite painful. But I would like to say at this point, this is my periodic reminder that I absolutely love Donkey Kong Country Returns. Please do not take this as a critique of the original version's controls, as in any way negating that fact. I love it. Honestly, I do. But it is the motion controls are difficult. I have noticed some other differences.
Okay.
And I'm wondering, there's something, I think it might have been you that mentioned this in one of our private chats. This is good podcasting, isn't it? I've noticed that the color palette is a bit more desaturated in the original Wii version. And I'm wondering if that's something to do with, I've read speculation that this version of Returns, the HD version I mean, is not a port of the Wii version, but is in fact a port of the 3DS version. Is that right? Or is that just something that people are speculating?
I think it would almost have to be, considering.
But I think that accounts for the palette differences as well, because I think the handheld platform warranted bolder colours. I'm sort of spitballing here.
And honestly, like, have you gone back and just looked at any Wii game? Like beyond Donkey Kong Country Returns, I think the Wii in general, it's pre-HD Nintendo, but there's something about the Wii's color palette that just looks muddy and blurry and not very crisp.
Because I kept banging my telly on the top like they do in TV shows. It didn't make any difference. Banged it again. Banged it.
Even older, like, Nintendo consoles that predate the Wii, I don't feel like had this problem the Wii does. There's just something about the Wii. I don't know what it is. I'm not technically minded enough to figure it out, nor am I interested enough. But yeah, the Wii just looks washed out.
Washed out, yes, that's exactly it. Yeah. So maybe that's just the hardware then. I don't know. You've been looking into some of the differences, haven't you, Hyle?
I would say the most important change, to me, personally speaking, is rectifying the biggest problem of Donkey Kong Country Returns. The biggest problem...
What's that?
of Donkey Kong Country Returns was that this new character, this pig who wears spectacles.
Spectacles.
This nearsighted pig. He was just given the name Tutorial Pig. And the thing you know about me, Matt, and you are also wired very similarly to how I think pretty much anybody on DK Vine's staff would think, character and characters in games matter above all else. Right?
Yes.
We obsess over these characters.
At the very least, I'm a stickler for a named character.
They all deserve a name. It's one of the biggest flaws of Donkey Kong 64 is that all of the NPCs weren't given names, which meant we had to step up and name them over an 11 to 12 year interval of time, because you were the one who named Rodney the hare. That wasn't a DK Vine name before you joined the staff, and you realized you never named the hare, the rabbit that races Lanky Kong. And you're like, well, how about Rodney?
Because I thought he was a rabbit, and then I realised that the race was a play on the tortoise and the hare. So I realised he must be a hare. But at that point, I'd already suggested Rodney. It's a cool story, right?
I like Rodney just because he does look like a Rodney. You look at that face.
He looks a bit like a twat, yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, so Retro did not name this character that they obviously thought quite highly of, considering he was everywhere in the game. And it was
By
just
the way,
what
I'd like to apologise to any of our Rodney listeners.
Yeah, I mean, you can't help your given name.
I'm called Matt. It rhymes with twat.
Yeah, my name is Hyle, which is usually married with Hitler.
Yeah, so don't worry, Rods.
So. Don't worry, Ross. We could not abide Tutorial Pig. We called him Checkpoint for
Checkpoint is excellent, isn't it?
Checkpoint, yeah. Because there's an oink at the end of it. Checkpoint. And for over 3 years, that was what we called him. It wasn't until Tropical Freeze that somebody at Retro, who obviously had their finger in our pies, they knew that we weren't happy about this, and they knew that they needed to give him a real name. And so he was named Professor Chops in Tropical Freeze.
Wasn't there a kind of promotional video for Tropical Freeze in which someone demonstrating the game referred to them, the Checkpoint character as we knew of them then, as Oinks or Oink?
Yes. Oinks are the.
We should save this material for the Professor Chops Spotlight episode, character witness episode, maybe.
The way I understand it, Oinks are the, tribe or clan of pigs.
The species.
While Professor Chops is the singular one, the lead one, who, yeah.
Oh, yes, because there are multiple ones, aren't there?
Yeah. So, anyway, they replaced the name Tutorial Pig in the gallery with Professor Chops. It's one of the only major alterations done as far as context goes in Returns HD.
Yes, you're not happy with Cranky Kong's dialogue font.
No, I think it's a downgrade. His new dialogue font just looks lazy. It looks like a placeholder font that they never went back and fixed.
There's lots of things that I think perhaps should have been carried over from Tropical Freeze that weren't. Yeah, I was wondering if we could talk about that a bit later. But anyway, yeah that's interesting. A little bit interesting.
I would also say my other biggest quibble, other than Cranky's dialogue font, which is just a minor thing, honestly, is that nobody from Retro Studios or Monster Games handled the 3DS port, and they actually designed the new levels in the new cloud world that you access from the Golden Temple. Nobody from Retro Studios or Monster Games appears in this version's credits. They just say thank you to the original development teams, but they never name any names. And
yeah, bizarre.
Yeah, I do think Forever Entertainment SA did a solid job with this port, personally speaking, but come on. They did not design this game. And this isn't a criticism of them, because this seems to be standard Nintendo policy these days in all like remakes or ports or enhanced ports. They just do it like this. And I am obviously very sensitive. You spoke some loving words about me earlier about championing people's creative talents, but especially in this era of AI ass slop that just oozes out. I'm very sensitive of creatives not getting their due, especially at the hands of giant multinational corporations. So I don't think that's right. I didn't think it was right when Rare would just sometimes shorten the names of their staffers in the end credits, like D-Wise. Well, that can be any D-Wise. That could be Dimitri Wise.
It added to the mystique of those characters, though, doesn't it? Years of speculation, years of calling Grant Kirkhope Greg Kirkhope. I don't know where that came from.
Probably because we knew Greg males, and they just all had to be Gregs at that point.
It's bound to be a Greg. Well, balance of probability, it's Greg.
But I do think that reason that they did that a lot of the time was because the Stampers didn't want their amazing talent poached by other studios. Could have been that. I don't think it's right, even though I love that era of Rare. I'm like, nah, that, give people their due. So I don't like this very much. I kept hoping they would patch it out relatively early. They still haven't. Time will tell, but...
Well, am I right in saying the Nintendo Music application still doesn't credit the artists?
No, it doesn't. I mean, and this is a problem too that just, it's company wide.
Yeah, it's the attitude of, if we don't have to, we won't.
Yeah.
We're not legally obligated to credit people. Why should we?
The Super Mario Brothers movie did not credit Grant Kirkhope or Chris Sutherland for the DK rap usage when it's the original version of the DK rap.
That is a travesty.
Yeah.
To have a work of genius like the DK rap not fully credited, it makes my blood boil. Boil!
We have an update on a point you brought up earlier. In the live stream, March Rose says, Matt, as someone who has birthed 2 kids, what you said is not true.
Well, it didn't sound true when I said it, so thank you for confirming.
No, I think you retained every agonizing second of that process. From what I hear, I can't speak from personal experience.
Well, that doesn't apply to the motion controls of Donkey Kong Country Returns, because I deleted that from my mind. And it was like, oh, this again.
If I have fathered any kids anywhere, I certainly don't know about them, so I wasn't there for the moment of their birth.
Because you're a player! Is that what you're saying?
I just spread it around wherever I go, like Johnny Appleseed.
Spreading wild oats. Oh, God. What has this become? What has this podcast become?
You said you wanted to keep it family friendly, so I was just talking about making families.
Changed my mind.
We talked a little bit about music just now. So, Matt, it's a rare opportunity to have somebody so musically inclined, such as yourself, on the Kongversation. Because usually, right, my biggest problem when discussing music for a game is I know what I like, but again, I don't understand musical theory. So again, I'm like, sound good, me think? Yay!
I think you did quite a good job of explaining what made my twiddlings worthwhile. So a better job than I would have done.
But I'm happy to have you here because what is often overlooked when discussing Donkey Kong Country Returns, any iteration of Donkey Kong Country Returns, is its soundtrack, which is mostly comprised of new arrangements of David Wise or Evelyn Novakovic classics from the original Donkey Kong Country by Kenji Yamamoto and his team. And we usually don't bring up Returns music all that much because of the major fact that David Wise himself came back for Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze. And that was the biggest deal. That was the biggest news story the day that game was announced. Like initially it was Dixie Kong, right? Like initially it was, Dixie Kong is back. We don't have the Kremlings back, but Dixie Kong is back. Oh my God, Dixie Kong is playable. Yeah. This is amazing. And then a couple hours later it was Guess who's really back? David Wise is back. Okay, start talking about that, you nerds.
The Dixie Kong David Wise 1-2 punch. Yeah, it was amazing.
You might call it a Kong Pow.
Did anyone actually ever use the Kong Pow? No.
Honestly, I do not miss the Kong Pow. Coming back to Returns after playing Tropical Freeze for so many years, I do not miss the Kong Pow whatsoever. It's like that was not needed in Tropical Freeze, it turns out. It's just kind of a burden, a hindrance, especially when you don't mean to activate it, but you press the buttons anyway. And you're like, wait, why is everything stopping? Why are the Kongs getting bigger? Why are they coming towards me? Why are they touching each other? It's a little terrifying.
Yeah, it sounds like it's been very traumatic for you.
I've dealt with it in my own way. I'm doing better with it.
Someone on the Discord chat, I believe it was Minehard1, I don't know if that's your real name, described Kenji Yamamoto's version of DK Island Swing as competent. Harsh. But, I don't mind it. It does some nice things. I like the way it segues into the slow section, but doesn't actually slow down and sort of keeps tempo with the main melody section. That's quite nicely worked out. Ultimately, David Wise did a similar thing for his version in Tropical Freeze. The thing is, of course, David Wise's version of DK Island Swing for Tropical Freeze completely blows it out of the water and renders it redundant. To the point where I'm always a little bit annoyed whenever I hear Nintendo using the Donkey Kong Country Returns version for anything. I always sort of think, what are you using that version for? Use the good version, Nintendo. I was annoyed that they used it for Tetris 99. But I really don't want to throw any shade on Kenji Yamamoto because I think by and large he did a pretty great job, really. It must be an incredibly daunting task to be given this huge pile of loved and adored tunes and told, right, Kenji, get these done. That's an exact quote from the meeting.
Yeah, it's kind of a thankless task, isn't it? Because primarily you don't have much room to stretch your creative muscles. You just have to give fresh contemporary recordings.
Yeah, and it's going to be under the watchful eye of twats like you and me who will be listening and judging. Oh, it's not as good as the original. That's what we sound like in our thoughts. And, but, it is what it is. I actually think some of the musical highlights of the game are, in fact, Kenji Yamamoto's original compositions.
I agree.
Obviously, the Rocket Barrel tune has had a lot of, it's in Smash Brothers, isn't it?
Yes.
And it's certainly returned in Tropical Freeze. Lots of David Wise versions of a Kenji Yamamoto original track. So it's a bit of tit for tat. That's nice, isn't it? My personal favorite is Boulder Roller, which is an all-time classic in my book. Side note, Boulder Roller is not actually included in the music gallery. Another tune, mislabeled Boulder Roller, is there instead. And I just think, given that they bothered to update Professor Chops' name in the gallery, this oversight makes me furious!
Well, I've got a theory.
My microphone technique, so what I did there is I turned away.
Yeah, you still peeked out on my end. You still...
Oh, dear.
Discord just cut that out. It's like, oh, somebody is having a moment. They're having a conniption fit. You better keep it quiet. Yeah.
I'm gonna have to end the podcast early.
No, it's fine. You know what? If anything, if it doesn't come through in the actual recording, I'll add a scream in post and nobody will be the wiser.
But, it's a pity they've not, as far as I can tell, they've not really updated the soundtrack. I have been listening to the soundtrack, I've become one of these horrible people that goes on runs. I'm sorry, everyone. On my runs and as to comparing them, I can't tell the difference. So if they have updated it, sorry, Kenji, I didn't realise. I do think the problem I've got, Hyle, is I want to be sort of respectful and sort of positively inclined. But a lot of the things I wanted to say sound a bit negative, so I hope you'll indulge me.
No, it's fine. You don't have to be completely positive on this podcast.
I do!
You can say things that are
all right, I'll say the thing I was thinking of saying.
From time to time.
Okay, it's not that prickly. All I was going to say is I think out of all the Donkey Kong countries, 1, 2, 3, Tropical Freeze Returns. That's the wrong order, but I believe Returns is the one that sounds the most dated.
True.
Even more so than the original trilogy. And I think it's because the original trilogy tends to favour kind of synthesizer, ethereal sounds and noises, and doesn't really attempt to imitate real musical instruments. And at the same time, Tropical Freeze gets around the problem by actually using real instruments, or else using very high quality sound fonts and some very precise sequencing to sound like real performances if it's not actual real instruments. Whereas Returns is somewhere in between the two. It's synthesized instruments pretending to be real instruments, but to anyone that listens closely, it's not really a real performance.
Right.
Now, that's not a problem, but I don't know. I decided that made it dated. I don't know if that's fair or true, but it sounds like what it is, which is a sequenced piece of music.
Yeah, I think it's slightly dated because it is an echo. It is an echo of the original game's music for the most part. And yeah, you're right. Like, it's a shame that there aren't there isn't a complete reckoning of all of the music in the music playing section of the extras. Yeah. It's just one of those things, like, why couldn't you include them all? I want to hear them all at my own leisure. And yeah, it's a bit weird, isn't it? But I think they didn't update the name or the incorrect labeling of Boulder Roller, which is not Boulder Roller, not the track you're referring to, which played in the level Boulder Roller, not the one with Tiki Boulder. That's a different Boulder that
I love Tiki Boulder.
Yeah, but I think the reason they didn't fix that is they Forever Entertainment SA wasn't aware of it. I think they probably had directive. They probably had directive to change the tutorial pig thing because Professor Chops is featured at Donkey Kong Country Super Nintendo World. And they even have Professor Chops merchandise. He's on a little keychain. So they need that corrected so the people who discover Professor Chops on the Minecart Madness roller coaster and then buy the little keychain, the little rubbery keychain with him on there, and they're like, I love you, Professor Chops. They get home and they're like, Mommy, Daddy, parental unit, I want Donkey Kong. I want to play Donkey Kong. I am the Donkey Kong person now, and my favorite character is Professor Chops. And then they get Donkey Kong Country Returns HD, and they unlock the Professor Chops concept art. And what name is their tutorial pig? And then they would chuck their Switch out of the car and vow to never be led down the primrose path that is Donkey Kong ever again, because it just leads to heartbreak, Matt. It leads to false identity.
You're right. You're absolutely right. Forever Entertainment, you did a good one there, mates.
So yeah, the music's all right.
Yeah, it's all right, isn't it?
Yeah.
No, I do honestly think his original tracks are quite good. Some of the boss musics aren't that great.
No, I don't care for this team's boss music.
But I love the Tiki Tak Tribe theme as well. It's
good. It's good.
It's, if you'll forgive the word, iconic.
It would be interesting though to see what this team would have done if they had like the directive, make it similar in tone to the original music, but compose all new tracks. I feel like they didn't have a lot to work with, and where they could really flex their creative muscles, they didn't really get a lot of opportunity to do so. So I don't think they ever really had a definitive voice for their musical output for this game. It was very constrained.
To be fair, if the original Donkey Kong Country tunes weren't in Donkey Kong Country Returns, I don't think I'd have enjoyed it as much. That's the truth. So, in a way, you can't get this right, Kenji. Whatever you do, you're wrong. You can't win.
There's one bit where it really makes me glad that the original music is back, and I think Dustin has spoken to this in the past. It's the first level of the forest world, which is it's Vine Valley. It's called the forest world is Vine Valley, as we all know, but the level itself is also called Vine Valley. And so you blast up from the caverns, from the caves, and then as soon as you like break through into the forest, then the familiar din 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 din, that's me a cappella style doing the song, which doesn't work because my mouth isn't a synthesizer.
Hold on. I've got a kazoo.
That's amazing, Matt. You're
Sorry.
always prepared. I've got a kazoo in my desk drawer, and I never use it, even though I like.
Get your kazoo out for the lads.
All right, hold on. Here's my
Get
kazoo.
your kazoo out. Get your kazoo out. Get your kazoo out for the lads.
Matt, which way
Get
do I
your
put
kazoo out for the lads. What?
I've got a really personal question. Which part of the kazoo do I put my mouth on? The wide part or the small
Actually
part?
doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter.
No.
Okay,
It
hold on.
makes the same noise.
No, that doesn't work. Hold on. No, it's not working.
You don't blow, you sort of vocalize. So go.
Oh my god! Oh wow! Man, I'm just gonna talk like this from now on. This is amazing! Oh wow, this is great podcasting right here. Oh wow. Hi, I want to talk about Donkey Kong, but I'm going to sound like I am in a wind tunnel and I'm a robot. Alright, enough of that.
Do you edit these?
Not much.
Okay.
I put the kazoo away, everyone. The kazoo is going away. But if you enjoyed Hyle and Matt on the kazoo and you want to hear more of that, let us know on Blue Sky.
Yeah. And we'll do an Oops All Tangents version where we talk about kazoos.
We'll call the episodes Kongversation Kazooie, and we'll just do the entire thing through the kazoo. And yeah.
Just incomprehensible nonsense. What? No change there then, am I right?
How can you keep a Donkey Kong podcast going for 13 years? Well, brilliant concepts like this, honestly.
Yeah.
So, Matt, replaying this game for the first time for the first, real dedicated time in over a decade since I, last really played through Donkey Kong Country Returns 3D. Mm-hmm. I have actually discovered a few things about Returns that I could not have known had I not revisited it. And the discourse around Returns has pretty much cemented itself that it always was technically very good, but it failed in many ways as a Donkey Kong game, especially once Tropical Freeze came out as the superior experience. Mm-hmm. And I do agree that Tropical Freeze, honestly, is probably superior to this one. If I really had a gun to my head and I had to choose, I would say, yeah, Tropical Freeze. Probably, right?
Are you being sarcastic?
No, I would say Tropical Freeze is better than Returns.
Yeah, but you're saying it like that's a difficult decision, that's a difficult ruling to make.
Okay, I want to give the devil its due.
I love Returns, but
yeah,
it's no competition.
It's no competition, but there might be areas that I'd forgotten about because I hadn't really experienced Returns in full since Tropical Freeze landed on the Wii U in February 2014. There are certain things about Returns, certain things about its design or its philosophies or even its art direction that in retrospect, pun maybe intended, I don't know, I just say words and sometimes they line up into greater meaning.
It's hard to say the word retro now, isn't it?
It is. Yeah. Rare was ruined for us. I can't say the word platonic. I have to have a romantic relationship with everyone now. Yeah. So there are things about Returns that, truth be told, I prefer over Tropical Freeze. This is very exciting for me because I feel like this is uncharted territory. I often just say the same things over and over again that's how we really keep it going. I could say the same things through a kazoo and then it's exciting, but generally speaking, I've just been reheating the same boring chat for 13 years. This is new content.
Don't tell people that.
Well, they're going to figure it out. So at the very least, I can, head it off at the pass and they can make their peace with it early. But there are things about Returns that I like more than how Tropical Freeze does it. So I'm just going to go down the list. We'll see what you think. See if we agree.
All right.
Number 1, less reliance on the swirling banana puzzles. What I mean by that is there are many areas in Tropical Freeze, I mean, sometimes like at least once in every level, where you encounter swirling bananas or bananas that appear in a like floating clump. And you need to collect those bananas in a limited time or else they drop away. And if you get those bananas in the time, you get a puzzle piece.
Yeah. Did you find yourself being super fastidious about getting every single string of bananas this time around?
I was at first because I was just expecting that would be how I would unlock the puzzle pieces. But then it turned out those swirling banana puzzle pieces, they do exist in Returns, but it's very limited. There's 1 or 2, but it's not the norm. And once I kind of got
in the minecart stages, I think.
Yeah, minecarts and rocket barrels, there's a lot. And then there's a couple on the Golden Temple level. But generally speaking, it was probably a few worlds in where I started getting confident. I was like, that's not really a thing as much in Returns, is it? And that really allowed me to enjoy the levels a little bit more. In Tropical Freeze, there's this like obsessive need to grab every banana because you never know what might trigger a puzzle piece. But Returns, Returns game design, I feel, is a lot more rooted in maybe the game design of the original games as far as secrets go. Puzzle pieces are kind of just hidden. They're just slightly off the beaten path. And you don't need to worry about grabbing every errant minor collectible.
Yeah. I get stressed when there's a time limit on things.
Yes.
It makes me unhappy.
Well, a time limit, I would argue, is completely antithetical to Donkey Kong game design, to good Donkey Kong game design, because so much of what Donkey Kong Country is, yes, you can just bounce through the levels at a breakneck speed if you know what you're doing. And that's part of the beauty of it. But there's also a way to play it where you just lose yourself in the environments, in the levels. And both Returns and Tropical Freeze don't let you do that as much because a lot of the levels just crumble away and there's no backtracking after a certain point. But I would say Returns lets you do it a little bit more than Tropical Freeze does because there's less of a time limit on things like bananas that unlock puzzle pieces. And I like that.
I can't decide if I like that or not. It's similar, I suppose, to Kong Letters. Have you ever found yourself playing Donkey Kong Countries 1, 2, or 3 and being a little bit more attentive towards the Kong Letters just because your brain's been rewired by the retro era games? Funny that.
A little bit, yeah.
In that particular case, I don't know what's better of the two. I don't mind. So that's my groundbreaking opinion on that one.
Way to keep everyone happy, Matt.
Yeah.
Number 2, bonus stages. And I'm sure you noticed this, Matt. Bonus stages all have a variety of very visually interesting backgrounds.
100%. And I didn't realize this until replaying Returns, that every single background in the Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze bonus stages is just the same kind of Viking treasure hoard. Whereas in Returns, it's themed around the world in which you find the bonus.
Not just the world, but the levels themselves sometimes. Like sometimes you get completely bespoke backgrounds that are unique to the level you're playing. It's great. I'm sure it's a lot of work, but it's great. It really feels like the bonus stages are therefore a more organic part of the level you're playing. Yeah,
part of that level. Yeah. We found one that we agree on. Good.
Yeah. I'm glad it was the second one. But I'm glad that, like, you have that because I do feel like Tropical Freeze, it started to turn into every time you would get a bonus barrel cannon and it would blast you to a bonus stage. I would feel like you do in the original Donkey Kong Country when you collect 3 animal tokens, but you're really not trying to. And then you're like, oh, I have to leave the level. I have to go into this environment now.
No, another ostrich one.
Yeah. Oh no. I got 3 Winky tokens. I never felt that with Returns bonus stages, though. It just felt like it's just part of it. It's just over yonder.
Sorry to say that Tropical Freeze does have a better theme tune for the bonus levels, though.
Oh, sure. Like, I'm not saying I dislike Tropical Freeze now. I still prefer Tropical Freeze, but I'm, again, giving the devil its due and saying where Returns actually excels, shines a little bit brighter than its successor. So, point number 3. Mm-hmm. And this might be a little bit more controversial, or might be more in the eye of the beholder, maybe. While direct references to classic Donkey Kong Country games are frustratingly light in both Returns and Tropical Freeze, I would say Returns, at the very least, keeps it mostly to Donkey Kong when they reference something. You do get Mr. Game & Watch in the background of yes. Foggy Fumes. Also a Metroid Prime nod, I believe, in Foggy Fumes as well. But all references in the game are either to the original Donkey Kong Country or to the Donkey Kong arcade games, mostly Donkey Kong and Donkey Kong Jr. Tropical Freeze had a habit of, let's stick a Super Mario reference in the background. Let's stick a Super Mario reference in the background. Let's stick another Super Mario reference in the background. Let's do a Zelda joke here.
I'm going to sound like a bad fan here, but what Mario references are there?
There is one of Bowser's tanks in the background of the Frozen Factory level. Not the Frozen Factory on Donkey Kong Island, but the Juicy Jungle Factory that has the ice bits. There's a couple of down planes with the P-Wing emblem on them.
Oh. That was K. Rool's. He was trying to get to El Dorado.
Diddy Kong Pilot reference for those of you unaware.
Yes, thanks.
There's a audio clip of Charles Martinet as Mario going, yippee! That's hidden in the Grassland Groove song. It's very, very subtle, but it's there.
Okay. So it's nice, but it would have been nicer if it was a reference to Cranky Kong or something.
Or anything to Donkey Kong. Like they have the gramophone.
If it was Lanky Kong going, wow, no! Instead of Charles Martinet. Yeah.
They have the gramophone in the one level that plays the original Donkey Kong Country theme song. But that, I don't know, it just felt like, to your point earlier, Matt, it feels like sometimes Retro, and I don't want to speak ill of Retro. I love these two games. And I know Michael Kelbau was a fierce champion of Donkey Kong Country during his tenure as kind of head of the Donkey Kong Country series. But I would say some people at Retro, it just felt like they were either ashamed or disinterested to be working on a Donkey Kong Country game. And maybe I'm wrong. But it just, like, I don't mind the Metroid Prime references because obviously they worked on Metroid Prime and I would never...
It's the equivalent of Rare referencing Killer Instinct.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
Such like.
Exactly. But, well, yeah, when you're referencing Mario more than you are Donkey Kong in your Donkey Kong game, fuck off. Fuck off with that nonsense.
Wow, okay. Yeah, that escalated. Yeah, I agree with that one. Tick. Oh, that's a little tick in my little book.
So, yeah, I do like that. I mean, you get primarily arcade era references, but they're very on point when they're there. Like, they're part of the architecture of the temples, kind of like this ancient thing, like this olden days imagery that's represented by Donkey Kong's own olden days. I like that.
I'm
nice
happy with arcade references. I like the arcade games.
I mean, it's part of Donkey Kong's DNA.
It's part of our heritage.
Yeah. And I would like to say that I know Forever Entertainment SA did preserve most of the original context of the two versions of Returns. They did not go in and change quite a bit. They swapped out the Wiimotes being held up by the enormous temple relic of either young Cranky or an earlier Kong ancestor of Cranky, depending on your interpretation of it.
The latter. The latter is the correct one.
I wish they would have removed the Billy Mitchell reference.
Now, I would like to interject at this juncture to say I don't understand that joke.
Okay, it's not a joke. It's me pointing out that.
What's Billy Mitchell?
You know, King of Kong, the documentary King of Kong about the subculture of Donkey Kong weirdos who are Donkey Kong weirdos, but they are the people who religiously played the original 1981 arcade game, trying to get the high score. And Billy Mitchell is the controversial kind of antagonist of the documentary. He's bearded. He always wears an American flag tie, a necktie that has the American flag. And it turns out he might have been falsifying his accomplishments and getting on like leaderboards unethically. Right. And he's kind of just a massive D-hole, which is dick hole.
Okay, so I presume at the time of Returns coming out originally, he wasn't considered a D-hole.
No, he was still considered a D-hole, but the cheating aspect wasn't known. So they have that like simian head statue that you shoot into in the one temple level, and it has a big American flag necktie. So it is a tribute to Billy Mitchell in Donkey Kong Country Returns. It is not held up well, and maybe I'm speaking as an American who spent the 2010s advocating for a lot of problematic statues being torn down. I wanted that statue torn down as well, and I wanted it replaced with, maybe a Dustin Jackson reference. I think Dustin Jackson deserves a shout out in Donkey Kong games. Wouldn't you agree?
100%. Yeah. Please
did not get that.
Put Dustin in a game. Please.
Look, I've been a B, Cameron's been a B, Jeff has been a B in a ukulele game. We're good. Let's get the rest of the DK Vine staff.
Let's have Dustin Jackson as a massive statue in a jungle.
His ergonomic ass could be what you blast through in the next Donkey Kong game.
It's architectural perfection.
My final point, how I think Returns, actually, this is a latter day improvement. This wasn't applicable back in 2010. But I would say that having the cloud world, the bonus world that you access via the Golden Temple, as a fully implemented ninth world, and now the definitive version of Returns, or at least, spoilers, my opinion is the definitive version, is a much more satisfying endgame than Secret Seclusion was in Tropical Freeze. It feels so much more robust as the lost world of the game, and I feel it really ends on a much more positive note than just three wacky cloud levels. You just get the one wacky cloud level and then some interesting deviations of the levels you've seen before that point.
I don't know if I agree with that. That's hard because I do like the new levels, but I think if you were planning the game from the beginning, you wouldn't have cloud the way it is. You'd have it more, it would be part of the map proper rather than just something the screen fades into.
Sure.
Maybe you do something more with the levels themselves to make it clear they're in the clouds.
You have to keep the lore with the original Golden Temple stage. And Cranky specifically says in dialogue, if you spam Cranky's shop and you see all the dialogue options, Cranky does say that the prime golden banana, the giant golden banana being housed in the Golden Temple, transports you to an alternate dimension.
All right, that's fine. Accepted. You're quite easy. You're quite easy to sway me.
Well, it's because I have too much Donkey Kong lore in my brain. For more on the prime golden banana, the Golden Temple, and the origins of Tiki Tong and the Tiki Tak Tribe, please watch my DKU lore tour video.
Yes,
the Tiki Tak Tribe and the dawn of Donkey Kong Island.
Now, I wanted to talk to you about Returns HD in its capacity as a port, remake, upgrade, in the context of many other examples of such things in Donkey Kong Universe canon. In particular, I thought it might be fun to go to Fantasyland slightly, because I think it's fair to say we're both pretty well disposed towards this version of Returns, right? There is a part of my brain that lights up whenever there's a re-release of something, and that is the part of my brain that enjoys DVD extras, bonus featurettes, Easter eggs.
For our younger audience who might not have been around in 2010.
We can't go into this. We can't explain what DVD extras are.
A DVD extra
come to this.
was the bonus content sort of provided by the filmmakers.
It still happens. Some things still have them.
Okay,
Sometimes
okay.
there's Blu-rays of things.
Blu-rays
Some
are on the way out
children know
too,
what we're
Matt.
talking about.
Okay.
Okay. I just wanted to pick your brainium to ask you, before we had the full picture of what Returns HD was going to be, what would have been on your wish list for inclusion as extras, bonus features, enhancements, improvements? I've got a few of them in my mind, but it's your show, so you have to go first. That's the rule.
All right.
I've made a list. I've made 3 lists, actually.
I'm already on record as saying what I wanted when I predicted that this game was going to come out.
Okay.
And what I wanted was like less than even what we got. What I wanted was just them taking the HD upscale version of Returns they had sitting in their archive that we knew existed because it appeared on the Chinese NVIDIA
on that
system.
strange console, yeah.
Yeah, and that's all I wanted. I didn't want any bells, whistles, enhancements. I didn't even expect Donkey Kong Country Returns 3D elements being incorporated. I just was expecting Returns in a slightly upscaled HD version with button controllers, and I would have been happy.
All right, well, I've made some lists.
Okay.
So I hope you can enjoy this.
I do, because it means I don't have to talk for a bit.
Okay, so I've made a list of things we did get. I've made a list of things that I felt we could have got, but didn't. And I've made a list of things that we probably wouldn't have had a chance in hell of getting, but it's nice to think about. The list of things we did get, like you say, the simple fact that it's playable on Donkey Kong Country Returns is playable on the Switch. I've wanted this for ages. I'm happy to see it. All of the main Donkey Kong Country games are now playable on the Switch, and that's great. I like, it's an HD upgrade. That's nice. What you said, the Returns 3D levels, the motion controls are now demoted to the second option. And also Returns 3D's new mode, or as it's now renamed, modern mode. So that's all great. Those are the things we did get.
It's modern mode, even though it's kind of from 2013.
Yes. It's not new anymore. It's just modern.
They've tweaked it slightly, which is funny because modern mode new mode back in Returns 3D introduced a lot of the notions that would then be incorporated into Tropical Freeze proper.
Yeah.
And then when we got the Tropical Freeze Switch port, they added New Funky mode, which then New Funky mode helped influence the original new mode and made it modern mode in Returns HD. It's very incestuous. It's like step-sibling pornography.
That's really nice to think about. My other list... Now, this is a more interesting thing. So these are some things that I thought there was a decent chance we could have had, but we didn't. So let's see what you think about these. Donkey Kong's furry shenanigans from Tropical Freeze. Basically, Donkey Kong and Diddy Kong from Tropical Freeze retrofitted into Returns, right?
Yeah.
And I acknowledge they have done some work on DK's furry fluff, but compared to Tropical Freeze, it's not quite as good, is it?
Here's one reason why I think they didn't go all the way, or they couldn't go all the way with that.
Yeah, it may not have been practical, I guess, but...
Well, that and the cutscenes don't really implement it, and they couldn't... They didn't have the budget to do new versions of the classic cutscenes.
Well, that leads me to my second thing.
Okay, go ahead.
Which is upgraded cutscenes. And yeah, I can understand why they've not been updated. I bet the source files are lost on some hard drive somewhere.
Remember that Retro couldn't even update the cutscenes for Tropical Freeze when they did the Switch version. They couldn't add Funky Kong to the narrative cutscenes. It
just doesn't make you wonder what the actual point of pre-rendered cutscenes is, given the power of modern consoles. Why the non-re-rendered ones look just as good, I reckon. They're better in a way because they marry better with the gameplay. As it is, it reminds me a bit of, when... I don't know if this is the same in America, but if you watch a TV show from the 1980s or earlier, when a character goes from a studio set on location to a location, the footage switches from videotape to film.
I do know what you're referring to, yeah.
Are you still with me?
I'm with you. I understand. I've seen enough British television from the 80s that I know exactly what you're talking about.
Okay, here's my next thing. Diddy Kong playable in single-player mirror mode, like in Tropical Freeze, where you can play as the Buddy Kong.
Yes, that would have been nice. That is the biggest criticism I have towards Returns, but also Tropical Freeze in a way. It's the de-emphasis of the partner Kong in single player.
Yeah.
And how there are even some levels that don't even provide you a DK barrel. And in modern mode, you can just bring in a DK barrel should you want. But it is kind of discouraging because so much of the fun of Donkey Kong Country is having two Kongs working in tandem, or at the very least tagging out to one another. And I don't like how they thought that wasn't an essential component.
I've been playing mirror mode now probably for longer than the main mode, simply because it's more difficult.
Yes,
so I've more or less forgotten that Diddy Kong exists. You know, it's just old donkey. Donkey.
If I wanted that, I would just play Jungle Beat again. I mean, what are you doing here, Retro?
Slightly related to that, wouldn't it be nice to have had the blue Kong letters in mirror mode?
Yes.
It makes them feel more collectible.
I do like that they made that change in Tropical Freeze based on the little star emblem that you got all the Kong letters changing to blue if you get them again in mirror mode. Then they just made the Kong letters blue themselves in Tropical Freeze. I was like, that's great. I love that. I wish they would have gone back and retconned it, but, whatever.
Oh, well. Now, we're veering towards the unlikely, but how about this? Cameos, not playable, but cameos from Dixie and Funky. Possibly even Talks. Not playable, but, some supporting role somewhere. I don't know. Can I just say, I love Talks?
I know you love Talks. I love Talks.
I love Talks!
I mean, we did a Conversation mini on Talks when we found out that Talks existed.
This is quite a long list.
It's fine.
One of the things we talked about earlier, it'd be nice to have the whole soundtrack available in extras, not just 4 tracks from each world.
I agree with that.
So label the music correctly. I'm going to skip some of these because they're kind of useless. Do you know what? I'm going to go straight to the more interesting list of things that are very unlikely, but, it was one of the things I was thinking about when the game was announced. How about that?
Okay.
Let's go straight to that. Playable Dixie, Cranky and Funky. Of course. Obviously. That's the first thing all of us thought. And I know there's a good chance that would break the game, to say nothing of... Yeah. But
it would.
Make them unlockable. Think of the joy. Think of the joy for every girl and boy.
I mean, yeah, the game is not designed around their capabilities. I mean, with Tropical Freeze for Switch, they got around it with Funky by just basically making Funky an amalgamation of all all 4 Kongs at the time. So, I don't know how you would do that in Returns.
No, it's completely impractical. I don't know why I said it, but yeah, we were all thinking it, weren't we?
I was never thinking it because my expectations were even lower than what we got. You were thinking it!
Admit it!
Oh, maybe I popped in there once or twice, toilet thoughts.
King K. Rool. I know, it seems insane, but it isn't that insane because A, K. Rool's popularity has been undeniably demonstrated to Nintendo at this point, and B, Retro Studios, who I appreciate didn't actually make this port, but even so, they were reportedly toying with the idea of bringing K. Rool in for the Tropical Freeze Switch port as a sort of super secret bonus.
What I'll say to this, though, yes, what I'll say to this, though, is the primary purpose behind getting Returns HD out when they got it out was to tie into the theme park, which K. Rool does not also factor in the theme park, and that's all based on the time.
That's the problem with the theme park.
Yeah, the theme park was broken down and planned, and they made all these commitments before the Smash ballot was even a thing. So I could see why there.
I know why none of these have a chance of ever having been real. This hypothetical reality could never have existed.
You're in fantasy land, and I'm bringing you back from the cloud realm, is what I'm doing.
Okay, I've got 2 more of these.
Well, no, I just want to say one more thing about K. Rool is part of the reason Retro did not do that in Tropical Freeze for Switch is Nintendo knew K. Rool was going to be in Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, and they wanted like the excitement, the moment saved for that. Likewise, I have a feeling that any future plans for K. Rool in the core Donkey Kong series, they don't want to blunt K. Rool's victorious villainous return in the Donkey Kong series by wasting it on the second port of a 15-year-old game.
Sure. Would have been nice though, wouldn't it? Right. Okay. I've got two more of these.
Okay.
Banana yellow video game. Sorry. Banana yellow game card. I agree.
I agree with that.
When did Donkey Kong game product stop being banana yellow? I'm very disappointed.
2000 onward, we haven't gotten a single banana yellow anything.
No, I understand when it went to CD based or disc based, but we're back to game cards now. Make them yellow, please.
I know there's tiny, but we can still see the color underneath the label.
Plastic comes in yellow.
It does. Plastic comes in so many things. It's also killing the dolphins.
Right, I've just written Brothers Bear.
I don't think we need to get into that. We
all
of them too. I love them.
I want all of them.
You want all 14?
All is it 14? Is that including Bear Bear?
Well, no, that's including Bachelor Bear. I'm not including Bear, who's probably Bizarre Bear, but everybody's too cowardly to say it.
Bizarre, Bramble, oh god, Bachelor, Barnacle, Blunder,
Matt,
Brash.
Matt.
What? Sorry.
Allow me. Please, allow me. Bizarre, Barnacle, Brash, Blunder, Brigadier Bazooka Bear, Blue Bear, Bramble Bear, Barter Bear, Blizzard Bear, Benny and Bjorn Bear, Baffle Bear, Boomer Bear, Bachelor Bear.
Yeah, okay. So 15 if you include the apocryphal Donkey Kong Land 3. Okay.
No, that's probably Bizarre Bear. If you want to think it's just Bear Bear. If you want to think it's just Bear Bear, I'm not stopping you, but come on.
If the listeners at home want to think that, the listeners at home are wrong. And they might want to have a think about the other things in their life that they might be wrong about.
It's never too late for self-improvement.
So, okay, that's my abortive section. I've finished that now. I'm just trying to contribute to the podcast.
No, I appreciate that, and
I think your heart sinks a bit whenever I come with some pre-prepared material.
No, it's great. I'm glad you prepare ahead of time, and I don't have to do it all. It's liberating because I can get on with my life. I can do a little bit more. I can, maybe have a cappuccino in the morning. It's nice.
Nice.
Yeah. So obviously that is a pretty reasonable list of things that people might have wanted from this, especially the Brothers Bear, but
especially the Brothers Bear.
There are and have been and still are lingering criticisms of this port. And we've addressed some of this preemptively here on the Kongversation last season, where it just was an obvious stickling point for some people. And it's the kind of thing that often comes about in any port or even remake of any of these games. And the one I'm talking about is, the price is too much. Nintendo, you really expect me to pay this for a 15-year-old game or a game that will be 15 years old this year? Come on.
I find it a little bit confusing that the download price is often higher than the physical media price.
Is that a thing?
That's bewildering to me. Well, certainly in England. I don't know if it's the same case over there. Okay. It's usually £50 for a download, and often it's £45 or less for a game physically.
No, they're usually the same here, so that's interesting.
I don't know. I don't know what I think about that. Games are quite expensive, aren't they?
They are, and
so if you've got it already, it's probably not worth buying it. Says the person that has 3 copies of it.
Well, I not only have 3 copies of it, I have 2 copies of this version. So
you do, don't you?
Yeah. So obviously, I'm the one who paid double for it. So I'm probably not one to say, oh, the price is fine. Especially when the only video games I purchase are DKU games. So it's not like I'm purchasing much in the way of video games, am I?
Yeah. Look, it's a very, very, very good game. If you don't have it already, it's worth it. If you do have it already, then just have a think about how much of a Donkey Kong fan you are.
Is the price too high? Yeah, it could have been at least $10 cheaper. I'm using USD here, Matt. You can...
Oh, what's that in real money?
Yeah.
I've always wanted to use the phrase, what's that in real money? And I was just so delighted to be able to say that. Thank you for availing me the opportunity.
I mean, the pound will probably be worth more than $1 very, very soon, so... Figure out what it was in real money, or was that just a gag?
No, I've lost interest in this thread.
Okay. So yeah, I agree. The price is probably too high. That being said, I would do some shocking, vile things in the name of Donkey Kong. So I did not care about the price.
Yeah, harassing game shop staff.
I wasn't harassing. I was showing it.
They call him the target terror.
No, I was like, you've seen me. Oh yeah, you got me. Good on you. I'm a freak. I'm a weirdo. I wasn't trying to be mean or oppressive.
You were wearing your Diddy Kong shirt and nothing else.
I was not wearing a Diddy Kong shirt. I was wearing my rare varsity jacket, which is a whole other level of odd.
Yeah, in a way, it's impressive that the bloke recognized it. So in a way, it's on him.
And he's going to listen to this episode and he's going to be like, oh my God, that's who I rang up.
Oh. Hi, Johnny from sales. Good to have you on board. The conversation
How did you know
train.
his name?
He looked like a Johnny.
Another major criticism of the game. I like how we didn't even address the price thing. It was like, yeah, probably, but I don't care.
Well, I don't know what to say about it. You know, things are expensive. It's not great, is it? But it's not much. I don't have much power over it.
No, prices are high everywhere. I mean, since the pandemic, artificial inflation is a thing, and you know, at the very least, Nintendo's games are cheaper than they were in the 90s.
Yeah, do you think we come across as quite bougie? It's probably too much, but it doesn't matter to the likes of you and me, so don't worry about it too much.
It doesn't matter for the person who doesn't buy any video game that hasn't been touched by Donkey Kong or his drooling idiot friends. So I don't know if that's bougie. That just might be deranged. That just might be like why the Target staff now flees for me whenever I walk through the door. The second criticism of the game that you see quite a bit, and especially since the game was previewed by the lucky outlets who actually got a review copy, unlike me, the load times. The load times. Are the load times too long? Matt, I want to hear what you have to say about this.
Yeah, well, I think you and I are on the same page here because we both play a lot of Tropical Freeze. Compared to Tropical Freeze, the load times are pretty normal, positively zippy. But it is true, because I've actually been playing the Wii version recently, I can confirm that compared to the Wii version, it is a little bit more sluggish. So, yeah, fair enough. What it boils down to is this. Are you okay with Tropical Freeze's load times? If you are, you'll be fine with this. If you're not, you won't.
Specifically the Wii U version of Tropical Freeze, which had just some absolutely intolerable loading times. I mean, especially when you first start the game and you're just in the cloud zoom in portion for what feels like 90 seconds.
Someone on Discord, possibly Dustin actually, a friend of the show, often mentioned ergonomic bummed Dustin. I'm so sorry. If he is listening to this.
Get that
I can't quite remember if it was you who said this, but I think it was Dustin anyway, went into some technical detail about why the load times couldn't possibly be any better, and there's just something inherent within the Switch hardware that means the load times have to be the way they are. I can't repeat the technical details of whatever it is that he said, but if you're anything like me, Hyle, you probably defer to anyone who sounds like they have some technical expertise.
That's why I defer to you with your music theory on the soundtrack of Donkey Kong Country.
Yeah, and then I fumble and then get my kazoo out.
I got my kazoo out. It was a grand time. It was probably the highlight of this episode.
Yeah, we'll do a sort of straw poll on the Twitch stream. What was your favourite bit? Was it the kazoo off or not? Put yes for yes, and don't put anything for no. See if anyone says yes.
I will say about the load times, they're longer than the original game. They didn't bother me because Tropical Freeze had longer load times. And once you get in the levels themselves, I think it handles just the same as always. It's not really that big of a problem. And, I get psyched up during the load times. In that one Star Wars, I mentioned Star Wars earlier. I'm going to talk about another Star Wars. In the one Star Wars, the Phantom Menace, when they're fighting the bedeviled menace Darth Maul, and Liam Neeson,
played by Peter Serafinovich, who also did that Paul McCartney thing, that Beatles thing I sent you the other week.
Liam Neeson got stabbed through the gut, and then Ewan McGregor's Obi-Wan Kenobi, Alec Guinness, by the way, of Ewan McGregor, was waiting to fight Darth Maul, and he was like, oh yeah, we're gonna fight to the death, him and I. And he was psyching himself up, and he just starts hopping around, and he's like, yeah, I'm gonna get you. And that's the way I feel. I feel in Return's loading times. It's just like, all right, yeah, boulder roller, we're gonna do this. Yeah, I'm gonna get some boulders rolled all over me. Yeah. So it's actually a plus. It's actually a benefit.
Wow. Okay, so one of the criticisms is a benefit. I love how we turned that around.
We turned it around. We can see the silver lining in almost anything here at the Kongversation. And you know what? How will the loading times work on the Switch 2 is going to be the question. Because at some point, Matt, we're all going to have Switch 2s, and we're going to be playing this on the Switch 2. The library's going over. So that will be the true test of time, is how long are the loading times on the Switch 2?
Yeah, and will it be possible for the load times to be any different? Is there something inherent in the way it loads?
That's what's going to be so exciting about the Switch 2. I don't care about any of the new games. I just want to know how it will affect the games we already have.
How long we stay in the clouds at the beginning of a Donkey Kong game.
That's right.
Okay.
That's right. We're going to have like 6 episodes alone just based on testing it out. How long will you be in the clouds in this Donkey Kong game on the Switch 2? Let's find out. First impressions. Go.
We're never scraping the barrel for topics.
No, we're great. We'll just do it all through a kazoo. We'll just do like the Kongversation re-kazooed. We'll just do old episodes, but through a kazoo.
Verbatim through a kazoo.
It'd probably work even better for the first 2 seasons, honestly.
Oh, yes.
So what are some of the criticisms that I'm not thinking of? Because the price and the load times are ones I feel like I can easily refute. Well, maybe not so much the price. I just shrugged and said, you buy too many video games then. What is a more salient criticism that might give us a bit more problems?
Well, I saw someone on Blue Sky. Actually, it was a friend of the show, the Cartoon Gamer.
Oh.
AKA Malik.
Malik?
They had posted some comparison images of Donkey Kong sort of gurning. I'm actually not sure where the 2 screenshots are from, but I'll attempt to describe. So Donkey Kong is in mid-air, having just bounced off something, probably a boss, and his eyes are sort of popping out, and his jaw is agape. And it's a side-by-side shot that he's done on there, and it's quite a nice comparison of the 2 models. And there's quite a surprising number of differences between the original and HD versions. And I think Malik was pointing out that Donkey Kong in the HD version looks less expressive. His face is less malleable. I don't want to put words into Malik's mouth. But I do see what he means, though. I don't mind either version myself, but I think it does raise the question of why they're different at all. That confuses me. Surely they should be the same base model, albeit one has a bit more fur than the other. But no, they're completely different facial poses. It's quite striking how much stronger the shading is in the original version too. The shading seems to be more flat lit in the HD version.
I will agree there, yeah.
And I don't know why that is. again, it's I don't have a huge problem with it. It's confusing though. I don't know why it's different.
I will say, like, that is a shame that even though the game, I would say, looks far superior to the original Go, there is like little artistic details. There was nuance to a lot of Return's visuals that are then lost. Like, imagine how much this game would pop if it retained all of that. And it is weird.
Right.
Yeah. Like, could it be because it was based primarily on Return's 3D and not the Wii game? Could that be a reason?
And
I don't
did
know.
Returns 3D have a different shading algorithm and Donkey Kong model? Who knows? Oh, and yeah, maybe they reduced the expressiveness of Donkey Kong's face for space reasons. I don't know.
Because that would be too much expressiveness for 3D.
for a small handheld console.
It would terrify people. It would cause them to have heart attacks while playing in 3DS.
Yeah.
They had to just downplay everything in Returns 3D for fear of frightening the populace.
So, yeah, I don't know what the reason is.
It's public safety. It's a good thing that they're not as expressive. See, I can turn everything around into a positive. But no,
Into
like
a positive, yeah.
That kind of stuff doesn't really bother me, maybe because I survived the Game Boy Advance remakes of the Donkey Kong Country trilogy, where the complete tone was just bulldozed over, especially in the first two Donkey Kong Country remakes. And like, at the very least, I feel like the quintessential tone and flavor of Donkey Kong Country Returns has been preserved here, and it has been
100%.
visually elevated, even if certain small details and flourishes are lost in the translation.
So, in short, that's a fair criticism, but won't worry about it.
I've also seen people say things about like certain bugs that I haven't personally encountered. The only one I've encountered is a couple levels I found it impossible to pick up a DK barrel at a certain point. Like, I just could not grab the DK barrel, and like, am I pressing the wrong button? Did I forget how to play the game? Why can't I pick up the DK barrel? And then after like 40 seconds, I somehow just pick it up, and then it's no longer a problem. So I don't know. I don't know what that is. If it's just me.
Maybe it's you, Hyle. Maybe the problem is you.
Well, I'm bad at video games, it turns out. And
yeah, I'm quite bad at video games.
I think that sometimes I just don't know how to pick up a barrel in a Donkey Kong game. It's kind of embarrassing. It's kind of my secret shame. If the person at Target who rang me up for this knew that I didn't even know how to pick up a barrel sometimes while playing a Donkey Kong game, they wouldn't say, "Oh, you really like Rare." They would say, "Oh, are you sure you should be starting with this one? Maybe you should check out Super Mario Brothers." I don't know.
You're a helpful guy.
Matt, this is our first episode of the season, and we have some phone calls. Yes.
Phone calls! Hooray!
Even though we have been on hiatus for over 2 months, the DK Vine hotline has still been active. 1-202-630-VINE 8463. You can give us a call at any time, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Doesn't matter where I am, because the DK Vine hotline, I could be under the bus that hit me, and the DK Vine hotline would still be up. You could send in your eulogies. And that depressed me. Wow.
Wow.
We got a call, actually 2 calls that I compressed into 1 call. It's spoilers, Traveler of the Stars, frequent conversation caller. They called in, I think the day that, or at the very least the week Donkey Kong Country Returns HD came out. So we're going to start with that one. We're going to go down the list. Most of these calls did come in after I advertised the episode on social media a week ago. But we're going to play each call. We're going to discuss what they have to say, and then we'll play the next one, and then we'll play the next one, and so on, until we're just kind of done with the calls.
Okay.
All right, let's go.
Hello, Hyle. Looking gorgeous as ever. This is Traveler of the Stars, calling in about Donkey Kong Country Returns, HD. I have a lot of thoughts to share, but I know I talk a lot, so I'm going to try and condense them all down. So let's get into it. So everyone listening to this call, go read Hyle's review on DK Vine. It was really, really good. Yeah, I agree with basically everything. I agree with you, Hyle, that the visuals are good, and the hiccups are not things that really anyone would notice unless you have a side-by-side comparison. I grew up on Returns. Okay, I'm in that, like, oh, nostalgia for Returns, like, generation. The minor things did not bother me. I feel like, as Hyle mentioned in his review, and I feel like it's being forgotten, Nintendo has a basic HD version of Returns that was on the NVIDIA Shield. That's literally just the Wii version. Nintendo would not have needed to spend the money contracting a third-party studio to not only port Returns, but truly give it a remaster for its visuals, making it the definitive version of the game by including the 3DS exclusive content. No necky nightmare situation where we're missing content going forward, you know? And to that end, Hyle has mentioned, unlike the GBA DKC remakes, which have their own share of unique content and sort of take turns muddying artistic intent, like DKC2's ending, Hyle, am I right? Returns HD is the definitive version of the game. So going back to the visuals, I think people need to remember that YouTube and social media videos of the game don't capture its visuals fully. I had bought very simple HD upscale into the games, which Nintendo has done, and was very happy with Returns HD. Those silhouette levels, especially Sunset Shore and Smoky Peak, look great. The orange and red look super, super great. The forest world with sun shining through the trees looks great as well, and the volcano world too. Is it worth $60? Maybe not the hardcore DKC fans or even the fans who picked up Returns 3D, but don't say it's a lazy port. I've been trying to fight the good fight out there by saying it's not a lazy port. 'Cause not. Again, why didn't Nintendo just put the NVIDIA Shield version on the Switch if that was their goal? I think we should give Forever Entertainment more of their flowers, and I think this title will hopefully receive more of its flowers, you know? So that's my first call about that. And then I'm going to give my thoughts very quickly on the game after. So let me call back. It's me again, Traveler, bringing in some fresh young blood here. So yeah, it was cool, Hyle, seeing you sort of gained a new appreciation of the game in your review. In the lead up to this game's release, I've actually seen a few, not a lot, but a few people saying they prefer this to Tropical Freeze. I was thinking why? You know, do I agree? Probably not, right? But in my view, this is basically the same type of people who say DKC1 is better than DKC2. DKC2 is more bombastic, has more mentioned levels, and is basically the 90s version of Tropical Freeze, I'd say, right? DKC1 is a lot more subdued, and I think Returns follows in those footsteps, which is helped by Returns' soundtrack being largely from DKC1. So yeah, I'd say Returns is more atmospheric for people. I love the world transitions. No other Donkey Kong game, I don't think, has done that, and it's so great. And guess what, Hyle? I don't think I've heard you talk about this before, but do you know Returns does better than every single other DKC game? And yeah, I'm including 2 and Tropical Freeze. That is that the world map has unique variations for every world. That is a super cool detail, and no other DKC game has done that. In fact, when Tropical Freeze came out, I remember being disappointed because I was like, oh, not every island has a theme. So even David Wise didn't do that. So I, give it a little bit of props for that. It's pretty cool. I also do think the soundtrack is pretty good. Obviously, the nostalgia for the original DKC OST can't be replaced, but I do think Returns does a great job at capturing the feelings of the OG game. With an exception would probably be Aquatic Ambiance, which, to be fair, was featured at a more energetic level in Returns. But I'd say the OG songs are admittedly a bit more forgettable. They're hard to compare to Wise, of course. But I do think the Tiki Tak Tribe theme, and especially the Rocket Barrel themes, are iconic at this point. Wise remixed the Rocket Barrel theme throughout Tropical Freeze, For me, Returns was a different game back in the Wii days. I played New Super Mario Bros. DS and Wii, and Returns was so much more atmospheric. The music made me feel things at the time. I was like, whoa, what are they going for? And I loved it. The Tiki Tak Tribe are a bit more bland, but I do think the Tiki and Totem iconography really works well with DK. Making musical instruments, villains is pretty creative, I'd say. It'd be cool to see Tiki Tak Tribe ruins in future DK games alongside Kremlin stuff. I hope it wrinkles for long-term character lovers like Jeff will become a novelty of Returns as we get new games and more characters come back. With that being said, I think Returns is for real this time. As in, I think this acts as an end and beginning for DK. Switch was the foundation era for me, so to speak, and now with Returns HD, I view this as one, if not the final stopgap. Looking forward to what's next.
Well, thank you for the calls, Traveler of the Stars. It feels apropos to start a new season with your voice. Thank you so much. And I agree with everything Traveler said. Pretty much because Traveler was agreeing with my review on dkvine.com.
You mentioned the map musics on each world, which we didn't mention in our little foray into the music discussion. And I agree. I agree with you, Traveller. Also, NVIDIA Shield, that's what that strange console's called.
I told you it was called Nvidia Shield.
I wasn't listening.
That's fine.
Okay.
I don't listen to myself either. It's honestly quite tedious.
And nice to hear a reference to Necky Nutmare. I'm always delighted.
Like, I basically just agree with everything Traveler said, but I will say that I love the point at the end, how it is kind of funny how the Retro Studios era of Donkey Kong, which we rightfully assume is over, and it feels like Donkey Kong has just kind of been stuck in this, like, limbo or these failed starts for so long. So it's kind of appropriate that Donkey Kong, just as it's getting ready to move into the next phase, it kind of comes full circle. The Returns era and the subsequent era ends with Returns HD, a return to Returns.
Yeah, nice
and
bookend.
Yeah, it's kind of a nice, like, summation, and oh yes, I remember how we got here, and it allows us to kind of close the book at last. So it's a great point. Thank you for the calls.
Yeah, thanks.
Okay. All right. Let's go ahead and play our second caller.
We are back! We are back! The conversation is back! Oh man, I missed you guys so much. It is DKRDS, or Nick Bez, or whatever you want to call me. I am so stoked that you guys are back. It feels like it's been forever. You make my week so much better, so thank you, first and foremost. What are we talking about? Donkey Kong Country Returns HD? I was so ready to sit here and rag about that game and be like, I can't believe they re-released it again. I can't believe I'm buying it for a third time, blah, blah, blah. And I played it, and it's still a masterpiece, and it's still amazing, and it's like kind of made me want to like go back and play all of the Donkey Kong Country games again. So it's just really good. It's hard not to love a really good game. My question for you guys would be, what do you wish that they added to this version of the game that may have, given people more of an incentive to buy it as opposed to just making the exact same game again? I mean, like, it would have been so cool if they brought in, like, Lanky Kong was just, like, in the game or something like that. I don't know. Thank you guys for doing what you're doing. I have to grab my Stinky Ape summer hat. It's coming up soon. Got to grab it from the attic, make sure I'm wearing it. Okay. Goodbye.
Well, thank you for the call, DKRDS, or Nick.
Or whatever you want to call him.
Or whatever you want to call
Your
him.
enthusiasm is infectious, Nick.
Yes.
I'm glad you're stoked to have the conversation back.
Brag much? You have an attic that you can store your hats in?
Right. Well.
If I was that lucky, I would certainly have room for a 2D statue.
In answer to your question, Nick, all of the Brothers Bear and Lanky Kong.
Yeah, I feel like I need to come up with something new that's different from our little segment because to justify this call. So I will say maybe just replace the tokens of the Kongs on the map screen with the actual physical representation of the Kongs.
Oh, that's a great one. I can't believe I didn't say that one.
I.e. Tropical Freeze, which did it so much better.
See, lots of things that Tropical Freeze improved upon Returns with that I felt like quite easily could have been brought back. But hey, 'twas not to be. Doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter. It makes us appreciate Tropical Freeze all the more. And as Nick said, this was a masterpiece. Like, I don't want to say, Donkey Kong Country Returns, because Tropical Freeze did it so much better. it still has a place, and it's still a fantastic 2D platformer and a fantastic entry in the Donkey Kong pantheon.
Yeah, it would definitely have been better with Donkey Kong.
And the 14 Brothers Bear, I agree.
And the 14 Brothers Bear.
Yeah. Thank you for the call. All right, let's play our third caller.
Hello, Hyle. Hello, Matt. This is Emma. Hyle will recognize me as that one deranged idol fan who shows up a lot in his notifications on Blue Sky. So, about DKCR HD. I think the road from its announcement to its release has been a bit of a roller coaster of emotions to me. Like, if I'm being honest, I was a bit angry at first. 10 years without a new game, and all we get is a re-release. But my opinion has softened as the weeks went by, until like the whole drama, in quotation marks, about like the missing effects and whatnot. Then I was a bit disappointed again. This is mostly where my opinion has remained until the game's release. And then I read Hyle's review on the game, and it like changed my mind again. I decided to try the game with an open mind. Like, the internet will do what it does best and complain all the time. But if I'm being honest, I think the game is great. Even if it gets overshadowed by Tropical Freeze and dismissed by some people, I think this game stands on its own and still has fantastic environments and level design. Just recently, I unlocked the new levels from the 3DS version, and it was a nice surprise. I completely forgot that they were a thing, so like I was just ready to do the stage with the flying fruits and call it a day. But instead I had like a new world to explore, so that was a pleasant surprise. I'm not really sure how to end this call. I think I'm just happy to have a definitive edition of this game. And so I'm happy that the conversation is back. Have a good rest of episode, everyone. Goodbye.
Well, thank you so much for the call. And oh my God, like my review helped change somebody's mind. Why isn't Nintendo giving me these review copies, Matt?
Yeah.
I'm a better little shill for them than IGN, than these big time YouTube influencers.
Well, you're more influential than you realize, aren't you? I like that the new levels were a surprise. That's nice, isn't it?
Yeah. You know, I will say, like, because we spoke to the controversy around the game, and, you know, the internet does like to complain, especially like nowadays. It feels like a large part of these fandom vectors online. It's all about like how much criticism of something, how much can we keep from enjoying it? And sometimes criticism is warranted, and there are some criticisms to be had of Returns HD. I'm not saying that's not validated. Like, yes, absolutely have your criticisms of the game, but it's also about keeping it in perspective, right? And I completely get how people felt waiting for a new Donkey Kong game, waiting for the new Donkey Kong game, and you get another port. You get another past version of a game. It has been over 11 years since Tropical Freeze.
I suppose it's important to remember that this game isn't instead of a proper game, though.
That's the thing, and I think context.
It's this or nothing. Would you rather this or nothing?
Well, we at DK Vine have extensively chronicled the reasons behind Donkey Kong's lengthy absence. From its being a scrapped project, post-Tropical Freeze, a 3D like platformer, effectively open world almost, to like the long question mark of, okay, is Nintendo EPD taking it back in internally? And, you know, all these elements have been in flux and have been in play. And a game like Donkey Kong Country Returns HD can feel if you're not aware of that history, which is pretty, I understand, baroque, and unless you are like obsessively studying what is tantamount to hearsay, because like I know our sources are valid, but how do you know that we're valid? I completely get the lamentation of where the hell is Donkey Kong? Is Nintendo really giving us these reheated leftovers? But putting it into the proper perspective and the actual reasons why, and knowing that this isn't in lieu of a true Donkey Kong game. This is not just a placeholder, but this is to tie in to the current very big things happening for Donkey Kong on 2 separate continents right now with the theme park, and which will then be parlayed into a new game, hopefully sooner rather than later on the Switch too. I think that this is just a part of the puzzle, part of the grand tapestry that is Nintendo's plans for Donkey Kong. And so yeah, that's the best way I can put it, Matt. Was that flowery enough, that description?
It's very flowery. I enjoyed it. May I say, caller, I'm so sorry I didn't catch your name, but your voice is extremely soothing.
I am terrible with people's names. By the way, if I never repeat your name after a call, it's not me being rude. I am honestly terrible at picking up on people's names, and especially with the audio fidelity of a lot of these phone calls.
Yes.
I don't want to misstate anybody's name. So
you did identify yourself, but I couldn't quite catch it. Sorry.
Yes. So I'm thankful for the call. It's a wonderful call all the same. I just don't want to ever misidentify people, because my name, people throughout my entire life have called me Kyle, Matt, and the last thing I want to do is pay it forward with other people's names. So it ends with me.
I get this. Tell me if this is weird. Someone will say, "What's your name?" I'll say Matt, and they'll say Max. I'll say no, Matt. Mark. I'll go through every name beginning with. I don't know if it's because I mumble a lot. Could be that.
I think it's weird. I think it's weird. Here's the thing. I think a lot of people are terrible with names, but nobody has the self-awareness that they are terrible with names. So they just plow ahead. Yes. Well, thank you for the call. All right, let's take our fourth caller.
Thank you.
Hey, Hyle, the Conversation, DK Vine and friends. This is Jay St. G of Nerd Cage Live, calling from snowy Syracuse, New York, and I just happened to be scrolling and saw the hot topic of Donkey Kong Country Returns HD. So it's funny that came along because we literally just finished it on Twitch. That's twitch.tv/NerdCageLive. And my thoughts on it, I'm going to speak for my partner Joe as well. We both really like the game. In some aspects, I almost like it better than Tropical Freeze. I know it's blasphemous to some people, but I think it just has a lot of nice throwbacks. Every single world is fun, except that World 4 with all the minecarts and rocket barrels. That took me out of it. Look, I like a good minecart level, but not all clustered together. That was really the major flaw of the game, and the bosses weren't that great. And then again, the first Donkey Kong Country game, the bosses weren't that great either, but still, you expect more. Where Tropical Freeze, the bosses were amazing. Also, I didn't like the rocket barrel before the final fight. But, yeah, I think it was a really, really fun journey. It was, like I said, there was enough throwbacks there to make me happy, even though the first 2 SNES games will always be my favorite. So to me, it's a solid, 7.5 out of 10. And I'll just say I'll probably more likely replay Returns HD over Tropical Freeze. I'm not saying it's a better game, but I feel like it's got more replayability to it because of the pacing and it's not so aggravating. But yeah, Hyle, it's always good. We can't wait to have you back on Nerd Cage Live in the near future, and hopefully we stay in contact. And of course, to the followers of the Conversation, DK Vine, you guys are awesome. Keep up all the great work. Good night, God bless, and have the best day of your life.
Well, thank you for the call, Jay. Yes, I was on Nerd Cage Live last year.
Yes,
Matt.
this week's podcast is sponsored by Nerd Cage Live.
Here's my little story about doing that show, because it's a video show. It's a video show, so there's a visual component, unlike the Kongversation. So I didn't know what to do with my hands during it. Because I'm usually, when I'm doing the podcast, when I'm doing the conversation, I'm quite expressive with my hands, because it doesn't matter, because, nobody's seen me. So I feel like it helps me enunciate. It keeps up my energy levels. I'm like a boxer going the distance, right? So,
right.
Having,
yes, I'm quite like that. Yes, what's the word? It doesn't matter. Carry on.
Well, having a camera on me.
Gesticulate. I gesticulate.
Gesticulate. Yes, that's an amazing word. I love that word.
Thank
By the
you.
way,
It's one of mine, that.
No, some words you just love. Some words you say, I don't say that nearly enough, because every time I say it, it's a delight. But then you just forget about it, and then it doesn't come up again until you hear it. And
it
you're
sleeps
like,
in your mind.
Gesticulate. Anyway, my little story, my little embarrassing story about it is, so I didn't know what to do with my hands. This is not going where you think it's going, but I was trying to keep myself looking professional. And part of that too is, look, I'm old, Matt. I'm living in 2010. I still use wired earbuds for the podcast. I find that they are the most reliable for keeping audio bleed through out when I do a podcast, because we make jokes about doing a conversation in a studio with a chair that Dustin's ass cheeks have perfectly molded. But the truth is, we do this from the privacy of our own homes. And
wow, this is a peek behind the curtain.
I'm shattering the illusion for people, but you are on one side of the Atlantic. I'm on the other side of the Atlantic right now. We're doing this over a Discord call. And so to keep the audio bleed through of my co-host out, I use earbuds. That way I have less to edit on my end, on my audio feed. I don't have to meticulously silence every last portion, because Matt Cornah is blaring through the bits where I'm not talking. So anyway, when I was on Nerd Cage Live, I was like, well, I look a bit silly using wired earbuds in 2024. I'm going to use wireless earbuds.
Oh, wireless.
I do have a set, Bluetooth. So I hooked those up, and they did not fit my ear. And they kept falling out of my ear. So I'm sitting there doing this show, and all of a sudden my earbud just falls out, and I'm just mortified. And I'm just like, well, I'm on camera. There's no hiding it. So I just have to bend down and pick it up. And it's like, why is this guy just bending down on our show, wagging his bottom?
I'll see if I can find that clip. That sounds great. That's one for our YouTube channel. Or a GIF.
Anyway, Jay,
a GIF. It would make a good GIF.
Yeah.
Or GIF, if you will.
Jay, thank you, though. I quite enjoyed my time
thank you,
on the
Jay.
show. They would ask me questions like, what do you like outside of Donkey Kong? Like, what video games do you play outside of Donkey Kong?
Jay, you should have known better than to ask him that.
I was like, that's why Donkey Kong Country Returns HD is so affordable to me. I don't.
I think a lot of us were taken aback with World 4 and every single level being on rails. I sort of agree with him about that. It does sort of...
Sure.
It's odd. It's an odd choice. I can see why it puts some people off.
It is a creative misfire in Returns. I will stand by that. Although it was less grating knowing that I was going to have to experience it in Returns HD.
Yeah, knowing it in advance changes it, doesn't it? That's interesting.
It does, yeah. And honestly, the Rocket Barrel stages are less annoying this go around now that I've gotten better at them thanks to Tropical Freeze.
I rather like the World 4 level in Cloud, which I've forgotten the name of, because that one combines kind of platforming bits with minecarty bits.
There's like actual multiple fake outs where you think the fake out is that it's a minecart level when you thought it was a regular level, but then it becomes a regular level, like an on-foot level, and then it becomes a minecart level again, but it's just such a nice variety. I love it.
Yeah. Wish I could. I'm a terrible Donkey Kong fan. Can't remember the name of it. Anyway, thank you for the call.
Yes.
Jay.
It's also nice to see a lot of people concurring with my controversial notion that returns might have some qualities superior to Tropical Freeze. I thought I was going to be out on a limb on that one.
Well, he said it had more replayability.
Yeah, that's shocking. All right. I mean, like, I'm glad because I don't look like the asshole now. It's a shared asshole.
The best kind of asshole that there is.
All right, let's play our fifth penultimate call.
Hey, this is Cornah calling in for the very first episode of Conversation Season 13, which will hopefully not be superstitiously cursed in any way whatsoever. Anyways, Donkey Kong Country Returns HD is something I'm kind of two minds about. Just first of all, I think the port itself is competent, it works, but unfortunately it was kind of like a bare minimum effort port. There are like performance issues and there are other things that really just shouldn't be the case when you're porting a Wii/3DS game. I assume the 3DS version was the base because that's how you get the extra content in, with like very minimal changes. On the other hand, the game itself is available, which is good, but also it has received a really high amount of promotion from Nintendo, just like a lot of like social media posts, a very long sort of marketing cycle. And that might be partially just because we're in a very odd spot for this video's release schedule. Probably not going to get that many more games. The Switch 2 Direct is going to come out, and then Poke is going to pivot to the Switch 2, presumably. So partially probably just like a right place, right time sort of thing. But also potentially promoting Donkey Kong for what comes next. And it seems like sales data has been pretty healthy. We're going to get the full results, I think, during May for Nintendo's next like fiscal quarter. So I'm looking forward to that, and maybe there'll be an episode on that, who knows. So overall, I'm happier than not that this exists. It's not a perfect world, but I think it's just about, it was good that it happened, and Returns itself has continued to be like a linchpin of the series, just because we haven't had that much content for it afterwards, but simply the face of the new Donkey Kong, and maybe we'll be entering a new phase soon with a new console, but who's to say? Also, maybe come back to Twitter at some point. I understand moving to Blue Sky, but it doesn't seem like it'll be a super sustainable platform. Not enough people move that quickly, and the only reason I ever check Blue Sky is to see if conversations are happening, which they now are, which is great. Thank you again. I hope the season goes well.
Well, thank you for the call. No, I'm sorry. I'm not going to come back to Twitter. I can't. It's just...
get on Blue Sky. Is it Kronos? Or Kronos? Sorry, I again didn't quite catch the name. But come on, it's all right on Blue Sky. It's nice.
The nice thing is there's no, like, suppression. Every time I would link to the conversation, Twitter would suppress the post. And with Blue Sky, at least it's reaching my followers.
I found that even though I've got roughly 50% of the followers I had on www.twitter.com, I've had way more interactions with humans on it.
Yeah, it's not. I forgot what humans are like. They're not all bad.
Anyway, that's by the by.
Yeah. As far as the actual point goes, like,
have we had any sales figures?
Yeah, like it seemed to be selling pretty well, especially for the second port of a game from 2010. So, like, I think its first week, it sold higher numbers than any other Donkey Kong like remake or port, which is great. Or at least it like it back to a certain point, but like it's like maybe back to the year 2000 or something. I don't know. Like it did really well.
And that's bound to be just down to Nintendo getting behind it, which is what we talked about earlier.
Well,
it's just nice to see.
Nintendo getting behind it, but people also forget another big news story from the last year, which was Donkey Kong was in the top 5 growing video game brands coming out of the Super Mario Brothers movie. The Super Mario Brothers movie spiked massive interest in Donkey Kong again. So it's kind of like what I was saying, where people go to Universal Studios, but instead they were going to the movies, and they're going there because, yay, Mario, I know Mario, and they might know a little bit about Donkey Kong because he shows up in Mario Kart, but who cares? He's just the dumb gorilla character, not as cool as Wario or Yoshi. But then they would be exposed involuntarily to Donkey Kong characters and concepts, and they would be like, I never really had it put it to me that way. In that I was forced to watch Donkey Kong characters. I like it. I want to see more. And these are probably like 4-year-olds, right? So
Yes.
Yes,
that's what they sound like. That's how they talk.
They ask their parental units, Mummy, Daddy, may I please partake in some Donkey Kong? And they say, well, sure. Why not? Where's the harm in that? There's no ruinous podcast that you could then stumble onto because of the algorithm that would then lead you to a path of debauchery. So Donkey Kong has grown leaps and bounds in brand awareness in the last 2 years. And I believe Returns HD, beyond just Nintendo's own stellar promotion of it, is a direct beneficiary of that.
100%. I've said 100% too many times. I should be saying 101%.
Yeah. We've been doing this too long, Matt.
Too long.
We know what to say. We always use the same jokes. But you know what? We can always do it through a kazoo if it gets old. If it gets too old, we'll just do it through a kazoo.
Shove a kazoo in your mouth. Thank you for the call, Kronos.
Thank you. And look, if you don't want to go on Blue Sky, you can follow along on Patreon. DKVine.com has a embedded Facebook feed still from our Facebook page. I also announced the conversation there. So there's plenty of ways to keep abreast of what's happening on the conversation.
I mean, you announce it on DKVine.com. Actually, maybe you don't. Ignore that I said that.
I sometimes make DKVine forum postings about upcoming conversations. Yeah. I need to rethink how I do that because the DKVine forum doesn't seem to care. But maybe I'll do that, though, because I'm no longer on Twitter, just to keep it accessible. And also, I think YouTube, I'm going to start making announcements on YouTube as like YouTube post. Every conversation that we announce, going to do it on YouTube. So there's going to be plenty of ways
to camera.
Yeah. All right. We have one last call, Matt. Are you ready for the final
I'm
call
ready.
Of the Donkey Kong Country Returns HD First Impressions episode? This might be the last time Donkey Kong Country Returns ever returns. So this might be the very last call we ever play for a First Impressions episode. Shocking. Let's play it.
Hey guys, I'm someone who, I hope you're enjoying Returns HD. I just can't justify a purchase with it, at least not right now. I mean, I've never been too bothered with load times, so the 3DS version has served me well. The Wii version was actually my first Donkey Kong game, believe it or not. I just feel like the Nintendo's ports have been getting a bit lazier, or they've been a bit lacking always. It feels more egregious now for a few reasons. One, Nintendo just announced the discontinuation of the gold points, and there won't be Switch vouchers on the Switch 2, which is something that stinks given that it was basically your only methods of consistent discounts, in contrast to Sony and Microsoft, who often cut the prices of their first-party games permanently. In contrast, throughout the Switch's 8-year life, Mario plus Rabbids was duology were the only first-party games to get permanent price drops, and that's almost assuredly because Ubisoft published them, not Nintendo. While Nintendo is a much better company than Ubisoft, I feel Ubisoft outdoing them at anything is a bad look. Furthermore, thinking about it, the lower effort Switch ports kind of all started with Tropical Freeze, as much as I hate to say it. There was the Switch ports beforehand at least retailed at the same price as the original version and added all the DLC on top of new content. Tropical Freeze had nothing really new to add besides an easy mode. It retailed for $10 more than the Wii U version did, and they delisted the Wii U version from storefronts when the Switch version released. I feel like Tropical Freeze's success on the Switch kind of let Nintendo realize they could do a lot less and still make quite a profit. Like, Nintendo's definitely the best of the free first-party publishers right now, but I want them to be better. So I hope you have fun, but I just can't right now.
Well, thank you for the call. If you can't, you can't. It's all down to personal preference and like looking at your budget and saying like, no, like you're going to have to woo me a little bit harder, Nintendo. You're not really putting any oomph in the seduction technique. Sorry, this analogy is going poorly again. I need to rein it in, keep it family friendly. I apologize. I'm horny, Matt. Why am I always horny? Is there something about being a Donkey Kong journalist that just makes you, I was going to say Randy, but in this case it would be Rodney, right?
Sure, it would. Is it because you're on the show with a certain strapping English boy?
Yes, it's getting me quite Rodney, if you know what I mean.
With his deep blue eyes.
This is, yeah. So I'm sorry. Matt, I respect you too much to even playfully harass you in a sexual manner. I'm sorry. But the thing is, right, like, if you're still playing the 3DS version is pretty good. I never really had an issue with the frame rate. I'm the wrong person to ask, honestly, because I'm still playing. You know what I've played the most on the Nintendo Switch when you look at the sheer hours put into it?
I think I looked at your playtimes. I can't remember what it was. But go on, yeah, you'll have to say.
Yeah, the Super Nintendo.
Is it one of the... Yeah, there we go.
Super Nintendo, Nintendo Switch, Nintendo 64, Nintendo Switch. Like, I'm still playing games that are 30 years old, and I'm like, yeah, still look great. I'm been doing DK Vine done slow for the Donkey Kong Land trilogy on twitch.tv/DKVine. And one of the things I keep saying, like, I just did Donkey Kong Land 3's, like, some of the waterfall levels, and I just kept going, yes, this looks great. This looks terrific.
Yes, I caught the end of that stream.
Yeah, I have to stop myself and I have to say, I have to like put the like qualification on it that yes, it looks great for a Game Boy game in 1997. But as someone who was around when Game Boy games were coming out, when they were new, this looked amazing for a Game Boy game. And it still looks amazing for me because I have that historical context. So what I'm saying though is that, yeah, the port might be considered low effort, but I also don't think there was a whole lot needed to be done, personally speaking. And that then goes into the discussion about the price and how, yeah, it is overpriced. It should maybe be a budget title. It should maybe be half of what it is. But to the Johnny Come Lately or the Sally Sits It Out, I just made that one up. Who
I enjoyed it. It's good.
Who have never played Donkey Kong Country Returns, who have never owned any iteration of Donkey Kong Country Returns. Like, I know this sounds shady and it sounds unscrupulous, but this is a new game to them. So Nintendo probably feels they can justify the price tag on it. It's not great, but it's the truth.
Yeah, I feel like we should be sympathetic to that entire viewpoint. It's rubbish, isn't it, when money's tight? And
oh, yeah. Matt,
you have to
I bought some toothpaste.
In.
I bought some toothpaste the other day. And cost the same amount.
To hear where this is going.
It costs the same amount as it always does. And I get home. The box is the same size. But I get home. I take out the tube. They reduced the size of the tube by like something 25%. Yet I'm paying for the same amount of toothpaste I always have. Where is the fairness, I ask you?
Where's the fairness? Thank you for your call, caller. I don't believe you named yourself, so we've not been given an opportunity to get your name wrong.
This is my favorite. It's my favorite when there's no stakes.
Yes.
All right. Final thoughts, Matt, on this inaugural episode of the Conversation Season 13. So far, our luck has been pretty good in Season 13. You know how hotels won't have a 13th floor because of the, like, calamities that can befall, like the superstitions. So they just go from floor 12 to floor 14, even though there's not a floor in between. You know how that's a thing?
Yes. I'm going to stereotype and say I think that's an American thing, but yes.
Okay, well, that's an American thing because we all are scared of witches who live in the woods. But
right.
I was thinking, like, should I just jump ahead to the Conversation season 14? It's a little risky. It's a little dangerous.
Why not just get 2? Why don't you go straight to 15? Nice round number.
I was afraid a witch was going to gobble me up when I'm in mid-final thoughts. And so far, knock on wood, spread the sage around, burn some incense to ward off the evil. So far, so good. But anyway, sticking with season 13. I said in my written review on dkvine.com, which a couple of our callers praised, which I appreciate, because if you're not reading dkvine.com, but you're listening to the conversation, what on earth? What in the good, jolly, good grief are you doing not reading our website? We got some good stuff on there. I was able to tolerate minor imperfections, flaws, missing effects, longer load times.
We didn't cover the missing effects, did we? But I just don't know enough about it.
There's some like poomph clouds that aren't really poomphing the same.
I think some of the visual effects in both Returns and Tropical Freeze, they're not the greatest, but it's just not important enough to be worked up about.
No, and honestly, like, I think the new effects, like the new water effects, make up for it in my mind. I think anyway.
Some of the fire effects are a bit rubbish, is all.
Yeah. I can tolerate, though, minor imperfections if a piece of entertainment speaks to me on such a deep level that the good far outweighs the bad. Like, I don't need to sit there and say that wasn't a flawless masterpiece, therefore I will never speak kindly of it ever again. I feel like that's almost poison out of a DK barrel. I feel like that's poisonous to the entire, like, creative arts. And maybe this is too high-minded to speak of a port of a Donkey Kong game with, like, minimal effort. Not. But I do feel like people tend to be overly critical, and they think that counts as criticism. Like, that counts as valid criticism, is just tearing into something, finding all of the flaws. Cinema sins, Matt. Cinema sins.
Well, we've done some nitpicking in this episode.
We do, yeah, but we keep it in perspective. You can nitpick. You can nitpick, but you also shouldn't let the minor imperfections ultimately...
Don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good.
Exactly. And so maybe that's why I don't view this as a cheap cash-in or a lazy attempt at getting Donkey Kong out there at a time when Donkey Kong needs to be out there for Nintendo thanks to Super Nintendo World. In my mind, this is the definitive version of Returns. I think it finally elevates Returns away from the, as we said, faddish motion controls of the era it was released in, which have not aged well. Some people might prefer them. More power to you. I disagree. I think that this finally, gives us the proper button controls, the extra content of the 3DS port with the frame rate of the original, but also spruced up visually just enough that I feel like it does outweigh the negative imperfections. I feel like the pre-HD muddy dreariness of the Wii era can now be left in the past. We have a version of Returns that ticks most of the boxes. That's why I gave it an A- in my review.
Yeah, and for a long time, Returns 3D was what I considered to be the definitive version. But we're going to come to that. So stay tuned, listeners. There's more of this podcast.
Yeah, I also made a point in my review where I said, are you a Donkey Kong fan who has been around for at least as long as the original Donkey Kong Country Returns? Are you upset that this game came out after 11 years of no new standalone Donkey Kong games? Well, that's entirely valid to be perturbed by that. But this release, again, isn't for us. Ultimately, it's not. I mean, we can enjoy it. We can appreciate it. We can do a 3.5-hour podcast about it. Yeah, absolutely.
You can buy it twice. Still not for you, no matter how many copies you buy for yourself.
At least 2 so far, Matt. Who knows where that will take me in the future? I could end up with a whole drawer full of Returns HD copies next to my kazoos. TBD. watch this space. But this game is for the next generation of Donkey Kong fans who had no way to play and appreciate Donkey Kong Country Returns. This is for the people who watch the Super Mario Brothers movie, or who take a day trip to Universal Studios, go to Super Nintendo World, venture into Donkey Kong Country, and then fall in love with the world and its characters. And then they go home and they want to take that deep dive into the adventures of the Kongs. And you have to keep in mind, Returns was not available in any legal capacity except on the NVIDIA Shield for years.
Which nobody knows what that is.
No, it was exclusive to China too. So it wasn't available for years. And because of the timeline of the park's development, they needed to have a version of Returns out. So
yeah.
I don't view this as reheated leftovers so much as finally rectifying a mistake. A couple of mistakes, but a missing gap in the chronology. The game that mostly aligns with the theme park. The game that serves as the foundation for the next generation of Donkey Kong games.
Mostly aligns with the theme park and the scenes of the Mario film that are set on in Donkey Kong's world are reminiscent as well.
Which were primarily based on the theme park.
Golden Temple.
Yeah. Well, like the centerpiece of both the Jungle Kingdom in the Mario movie and the Donkey Kong Country theme park is the giant head that's seen at the end of the Golden Temple level.
Right, that's it, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, like, I will say that, like, this is my definitive version of Returns. I think you said this is your definitive version of Returns.
Yeah, spoiler alert. Yeah, I reckon.
Yeah, I think a lot of our audience will agree this is the definitive version of Returns, which makes me think one more point that is kind of infuriating. This is where you get your anger. If you're clicking this to have, like, justified rage about cartoon games with apes and monkeys, here you go. Here's your rage bait. In retrospect, having Donkey Kong Country Returns 3D at all kind of sucks. It's kind of infuriating. Let me explain, because that was my definitive version of Returns too, because it had button controls, because it had the superlative new levels in the cloud world. I think
and
Hyle? Yeah.
Hyle? It was in 3D.
It was in 3D as well. And the 3D effects were pretty cool. If you had the depth perception to appreciate the 3D effects, they were really all right in an era where we had a lot of shoddy 3D effects. The work done by Monster Games on Returns 3D, and especially those new levels, are so good in my opinion. I love them so much. They're so confident. They adhere to Retro's formula, but they're not afraid to do their own thing and introduce new elements. And I'm like, hell yeah.
And I'll tell you one thing they do quite well that Retro didn't do quite so well. DK barrels. Just a few more in the level. Where they'd be nice and convenient to have them.
They're lousy with DK barrels. I noticed that too, Matt. And I was like, make a mental note to bring up how the cloud levels have so much more DK barrels. They feel like proper Donkey Kong Country levels. It's great.
I felt they were quite reminiscent of the original trilogy in that respect. Yes, I like them. Not everyone likes them. I know some. I noticed a comment from DK Vine community member and amazing fan artist MDog 1000 million.
Count
he
the
doesn't
zeros.
Rate them. I mention that only because I quite like him and thus elevate his opinions even when I don't agree with them. But anyway, I like them. Carry on.
Yes, not everyone likes them, but I think it's kind of mostly agreed upon that they are fun, they don't feel out of place, and they provide a wonderful capper to the adventure. So I think about that, and I think about the wonderful work Monster Games did in their brief time shepherding the Donkey Kong series. And it's kind of wild to me that Monster Games was never given the opportunity to do an entire Donkey Kong Country or Donkey Kong Land game on their own alongside Retro going forward and doing Tropical Freeze. They were the natural studio to pick up the baton from Retro, either in between projects or after the fact. I know they were eventually bought out by another company, and now they're just doing...
I don't know the ins and outs of what's happened with Monster Games, but yeah, something like that.
Yeah,
right?
They're just doing realistic racing games now, whatever. Yeah. But at the time...
realistic racing.
Yeah, I like realistic racing, like when chickens turn into frogs and badgers.
That's what I like.
Yeah.
And then turn back again.
And turn back again, yeah. At the time in the early 2000s... Yeah, and when you run over them. At the time in the early 2010s...
keep interrupting.
Yes, and then you get interrupted, and then, yeah.
Sorry.
At the time in the early 2010s... Why didn't they get to make a completely original Donkey Kong adventure for the 3DS? Why did we get Returns 3D at all? Why wasn't Donkey Kong Country Returns 3D, not Donkey Kong Land Returns, done by Monster Studios based on the engine by Retro Games? It doesn't make any sense to me in retrospect. Like, Returns did really well. It was a financial success. Why wasn't that followed up on with an original 3DS adventure in that style? Why did we get a port of the same game on a 3DS? It baffles
and they
me.
absolutely should have called it Donkey Kong Land Returns. Do you remember in 2012 or 13 when we first got wind of what was then called Donkey Kong 3D? Those rumours. Some game shop in Australia had accidentally advertised Donkey Kong 3D as something coming soon to 3DS, only to take down all the relevant signage once they realised they may have let several cats out of several bags.
Yeah, 2012, I remember, because I was actually in Texas because Ozzy Ben and Alistair Craig had come over to visit. And so we were having like a DK Vine reunion, and this is when the story broke, and we were this is one of the first stories we helped break and like started getting picked up by the bigger media outlets. So yeah, I remember this quite well.
Yeah, so obviously at the time that led to wild speculation about a kind of Donkey Kong Land Returns, exactly like you say. And that would have been great. How good would that have been? And also, like you say, the Monster Games clearly capable of creating new levels, utilizing existing archetypes. We could have easily had something akin to Donkey Kong Land 3, where the setting is broadly the same. The level archetypes are retained, but the game itself has its own original direction, its own original story.
Yeah.
But obviously the levels are entirely new. Yeah, I would have liked to have seen that very much. It's one of the things I fantasize about, Hyle Russell. But obviously more of a pipe dream would be something more akin to Donkey Kong Land 1 with entirely new settings thrown in.
I mean, I would say that's more of a wacky pipe dream.
Yeah. Back reference. It's a funny one, isn't it? It's like in retrospect, the existence of Donkey Kong Country Returns 3D seems like a bit of an anomaly, but I did enjoy it at the time very much, definitely because of the control scheme, and also because, and this is important, I really like 3D. And I know some people hate it, and some people, like you mentioned, don't have the depth perception. And other people think it's a stupid gimmick. I am not one of those people. I admit it's a gimmick. I know it's a gimmick, and I love it. I recently watched Alfred Hitchcock's Dial M for Murder in 3D. And I assure you, there is not a film in existence that could more pointlessly have been filmed in 3D. It's an adaptation of a stage play that broadly stays in a single location throughout. But it was filmed in 3D, and I love it for that. And it helps that it's a great film anyway. But the point is, I love 3D. I love 3D things. I don't know if that's getting across. I consider the Nintendo 2DS to be a travesty. A travesty! I've run out of steam, but I think my point got across.
It's fine, because we're bearing in on 4 hours worth of Donkey Kong Country Returns HD chat.
Oh, is that all?
It's kind of disappointing. We could try harder, maybe for the next port. But I will say that if it wasn't for Donkey Kong Country Returns 3D, we wouldn't have the foundation of what I think is a definitive port of Donkey Kong Country Returns. So while it is made even more infuriating that it existed at all now that we have this version, paradoxically, we would not have this version if it wasn't for Donkey Kong Country Returns 3D. So what do? I guess you just
That's making my
accept.
head hurt.
I guess you just accept the reality that unfolded for us. This is the definitive version of Donkey Kong Country Returns now. And if I have the choice, I certainly would never want to play a different version of the game other than this one.
Yeah. I like things to be in 3D. Did I mention that?
Even
things that have no call to be.
Yeah.
Tell you what, bring me Donkey Kong Country Returns 3D HD. And then I'll be happy. I'll finally be happy. I'll finally be happy.
This has been a File 2 production.
Que rico.